Professor Gua dislikes these underhanded and scheming affairs, and once the truth comes to light, he might not pursue the matter further, but Yi Changfeng can't let it go. If they're not held accountable this time, they'll just come back and do it again. That's why Yi Changfeng can no longer tolerate it. As a teacher, I have always taught my students, through words and actions, what should be done and what shouldn't. Wei Tong has turned the martial arts curriculum at Liangzhou University into mere formalism, a complete outsider to the martial Dao who dares to instruct martial arts students. What on earth have they learned these days? Do you expect students trained by Wei Tong to resist martial Taoists? Ask Wei Tong what the basic elements of a pioneer are. Ask Wei Tong where the weakness of a triangular thunderkite lies. Do you think Wei Tong can answer that? He can't. He knows nothing about martial Dao yet dares to manage the martial arts college and takes liberties in directing teachers like Professor Gua, disrupting the teaching order. Chao Pei, I have a message for you. If you really know you are the president of Liangzhou University, then do something a president would do. Stand firm, show some backbone, and set an example for the students of an elite university. Don't ingratiate yourself with powerful interests, turning yourself into a spineless person. Yi Changfeng stood there, but in Chao Pei's eyes, it was as if he was standing high above, looking down on him, making Chao Pei feel utterly insignificant. This made Chao Pei furious with humiliation. He was a university president. Since when could a suspended teacher look down on him like this? Yi Changfeng, you've gone too far. Chao Pei's aura suddenly surged like a violent storm, pressing down on Yi Changfeng. He was at the early stage of orifice transforming, and although he was a literary Taoist, his aura was very formidable. In his opinion, he was more than enough to intimidate Yi Changfeng, who was at the mid-stage of God refining. But when Chao Pei's aura bore down on Yi Changfeng, he found that Yi Changfeng's imposing figure stood out like an unshakable sword in the storm, soaring to the skies, resolutely blocking Chao Pei's intimidation. Chao Pei's expression darkened, and, for a moment, he was unable to suppress Yi Changfeng. This swordsman had such a formidable sharpness. Yi Changfeng's upright figure made Chao Pei feel small and powerless. It was clear that he was pressuring Yi Changfeng, but it felt as if it was Yi Changfeng oppressing him, causing a storm of shock to rise in Chao Pei's heart. Yi Changfeng is this powerful? Chao Pei was astounded. Seeing that the situation was not right, Sun Hushuan, who did not expect the sudden confrontation between Chao Pei and Yi Changfeng, changed his expression slightly and was about to shout for them to stop when he suddenly realized he couldn't make a sound. He couldn't even intervene. Sun Hushuan felt a chill in his heart, not understanding what was happening. What he didn't see, however, was the black circle that had appeared beneath his feet. That was Zhu Yiji's square and round rules. He had quietly used his powerful cultivation to impose rules on Sun Hushuan. Within this black circle, one couldn't interfere with the conflict between Chao Pei and Yi Changfeng. In the distance, Zhu Yiji's gaze flickered with a cold intent. He had even silently bound the other teachers in the classroom with his square and round rules ability, preventing the other school leaders from intervening. This included Professor Gua. As an UR-level awakener above the stage of orifice transforming, the rules he set were difficult for anyone present to resist. Zhu Yiji's intention was clear. He wanted Chao Pei to deal with Yi Changfeng himself and teach Yi Changfeng a lesson. Woof! Xiao He turned his head and asked. Xiang Beifei, focusing on Yi Changfeng's aura, said, Senior brother is a martial Taoist. Chao Pei was unable to suppress Yi Changfeng. He had no idea how terrifying a steadfast swordsman could be when truly provoked. However, Chao Pei was not an ordinary person either, for he too was an SSR. Host, Chao Pei. SSR level, like fish in water system. Stage, early stage of orifice transforming. Chao Pei was a practitioner of the literary Tao. He had all manner of techniques in speech and conduct, and no matter what situation or predicament he encountered, the like fish in water system could always create favorable conditions for him, steering the situation to his advantage. This system could make smooth things smoother, and it could twist adverse situations towards a favorable direction. Chao Pei, being an orifice-transforming awakener, would take a serious hit to his reputation if he failed to suppress Yi Changfeng, who was in the mid-stage of God refining. Therefore, his system had already provided a prompt. Detected that Yi Changfeng's momentum is overly fierce. Host should not rashly challenge his edge. Use the tactic of the watergrass to avoid the momentum and suppress him from the left. Chao Pei's aura transformed completely, becoming light and ethereal, like clusters of watergrass floating in water, dissipating Yi Changfeng's fierce momentum. Then, all of his aura swept up again, concentrated on Yi Changfeng's left side, and in an instant, became incredibly dense, bearing down on Yi Changfeng forcefully. This tremendous oppression was terrifying, like a tidal wave roaring insanely, its presence vast and mighty. Yi Changfeng, you shouldn't commit insubordination, Chao Pei shouted. Even though he was a practitioner of the literary Tao, he was ultimately a realm higher than Yi Changfeng. The mid-stage of God refining and the early stage of orifice transforming were not the same thing at all. With the help of like fish in water, Chao Pei's aura once again grew stronger, overpowering Yi Changfeng's edge and pressing down on him once more. This time, it seemed very difficult for Yi Changfeng to withstand. However, Yi Changfeng's expression remained cold, still standing immovable as a mountain on the spot. Chao Pei, do you know what sword Tao is? Yi Changfeng watched Chao Pei coldly, indifferent to Chao Pei's terrifying momentum. You don't understand. You don't even know what martial arts really are. True martial arts can't just be suppressed with lip service. Boom! Yi Changfeng's aura suddenly surged violently. His body's strength formed a vortex around him, these vortices converging onto him, flashing with sword shadows as if it had split into countless threads of sword chi in an instant. But when others wanted to take a closer look, they found that these sword chi had once again condensed into an unstoppable sharp sword. Just one sword. Yi Changfeng's sword shadow slashed out directly. The air blasted with a roar, sword chi interweaving within it, elevating Yi Changfeng's aura by a notch. Boom! Yi Changfeng's sword light instantly shattered Chao Pei's oppression. How can this be? Chao Pei was shocked beyond measure. His orifice-transforming oppression had actually been shattered by Yi Changfeng, especially since Yi Changfeng's cultivation level seemed not to be in the mid-stage of God refining, but the late stage of God refining. Not just him, but even the others were extremely surprised to see Yi Changfeng's sudden surge in energy. Was this a sign of a breakthrough? Yi Changfeng had, at this moment, broken through his own limits, stepping into the late stage of God refining. Chao Pei, is this all you're capable of? Yi Changfeng's voice was as cold as frost. A powerful aura enveloped his body, converging into a sharp and fierce energy that silently landed on Ma Cainian. Upon seeing Xiang Beifei, Ma Cainian's heart shuddered, terrified by Xiang Beifei's formidable presence. Xiang Beifei was rumored to be capable of killing a one-armed crab at the late stage of meridian opening with a single punch. His presence here was no joking matter. Ma Cainian steadied himself and cursed under his breath. After all, he was an official of the Alliance. No matter how famous this youngster was, he was still just a civilian, powerless and insignificant. If anyone should be afraid, it ought to be him. Xiang Beifei, a big shot, huh? Ma Cainian said in a mocking tone. Xiang Beifei did not respond, merely glancing indifferently before walking toward Kong Daming and asking, I just saw the phone message. What happened to my grandfather? I'm not sure. He seemed unwell just now, so I helped him upstairs to rest. He's there now, Kong Daming replied. Understood. I'll go see him. Xiang Beifei, without another word, headed for the stairs. However, Ma Cainian, seeing himself being ignored, was quite annoyed. Not even the basic courtesies. Scram, Xiang Beifei said directly. Yes. Ma Cainian's mind went blank, and he involuntarily lay down and then actually rolled away on the floor. Ah? Kong Daming and Zhang Xiang watched in shock as Ma Cainian rolled away on the ground, completely dumbfounded. Ma Cainian actually just rolled away like that? This turn of events was utterly unexpected. Why are you patrolling the archive room? Who would be idle enough to break into the archives to steal things? If you ask me, it wouldn't even matter if we didn't come here for a whole year. Zhou Guan lazily placed his hands behind his head, following behind Sun Zhong. He wasn't very interested in this job and kept muttering all the way. Sun Zhong went to the third floor and patrolled along the rows of rooms. You patrolled the N-level talent appraisal department. Patrol value +2. You patrolled the N-level talent dispatch department. Patrol value +2. Sun Zhong made a couple of rounds in the empty rooms and then pressed a button on the wall to make sure the alarm was working correctly before leaving the room. You patrolled the main archive room entrance. Patrol value +5. Right then, an idea struck Zheng Xing, who promptly took out his cell phone to video call his son. Then asked, "Son, you said last time that you've seen Xiang Beifei. Is this the person Xiang Beifei?" During the freshman competition, though students from major elite schools weren't present, it was broadcasted live, so anyone who wasn't blind could recognize him. Zheng Xing's son, although a student of Jizhou University, had also seen Xiang Beifei. The moment he saw Xiang Beifei, he excitedly exclaimed, "It's him! It's him! The genius who trampled that Qingzhou University SSR underfoot. Dad, you actually saw him? My goodness! That was a legendary genius. So it really is that Xiang Beifei." Zheng Xing was also stunned. His son had mentioned the freshman contest before his holiday break, and back then, he too was amazed by Xiang Beifei. Little did he expect that he would encounter such a great genius today. After a moment, he quickly recovered and excitedly said, "He is Xiang Beifei. No doubt about it. My son met him before. He's from Jizhou University." Xiang Beifei momentarily set aside the matter and asked, "By the way, Uncle Kong, are there any houses for rent near your place? We're thinking of moving there." "A house? Yes, there are. You should have moved over a long time ago. The old man keeps talking about saving up money for your missions and such." "Why the sudden change of mind?" Kong Daming asked. "Xiaofei has grown up, and the house is too shabby. He might not find a wife," Xiang Qingda said seriously. "Ha ha ha, that's true," Kong Daming nodded. But Lu Hong disagreed. "Not necessarily. If you really like each other, who cares about the house? We still need a nice place to live. The old house was a bit too dark," Kong Daming said. "Leave it to me. I remember there's a family that just moved out from my floor, just 2 doors down from mine, diagonally opposite. It would be good to move here, easier to look out for each other." "When is Uncle Kong's restaurant planning to open?" Xiang Beifei asked again. The emergence of a one-armed crab, a type of desolate beast, hadn't been investigated thoroughly, and Xiang Beifei still hadn't found the person he currently suspected. Xiao Sheng, the guy who pretended to be an N-level clerk, an SR, disappeared just before the desolate beast appeared, and he wanted to see if Xiao Sheng would come back to work. "The day after tomorrow. The staff have also been asking. Speaking of which, I need to contact those employees. We've been closed for quite a while now," Kong Daming said. "I'll go to the wholesale market tomorrow. Our supplies have been cut off. We need to renegotiate," Xiang Qingda said. Kong Daming quickly said, "No need, Uncle Xiang, you rest, I'll go. We've been resting for so long, I need to get moving, and I know the place well anyway. There is a lot of prep for reopening, and many customers have booked appointments, waiting for your reopening. You'll be busy, I can go tomorrow." Xiang Qingda waved his hand, insisting. Unable to persuade him otherwise, Kong Daming could only agree. When Xiang Beifei returned home, he made sure to talk briefly in front of the living room camera with his grandfather, clarifying his reasons for moving. He outright said he could now earn money and simply didn't want to live there anymore. For a martial artist in the Meridian opening phase, earning enough to support oneself was far from difficult. The person monitoring their home, unless foolish, could simply ask around at school and would certainly understand Xiang Beifei's current cultivation realm, making this an excuse no one would suspect. With that, he figured the person would likely find new premises. Xiang Beifei was curious to see who would dare to secretly install surveillance under his observation. Having said all this, Xiaohe then blocked the camera again. That evening, the grandfather and grandson packed up their belongings together. And really, there were quite a lot of them. We'll need to call a cab. There's no elevator, so later we'll carry it down together. Xiang Qingde pondered on how to move in the easiest way possible. I can handle the stuff myself. Grandpa doesn't need to worry too much. Just rest, Xiang Beifei said. How can that be? You can't move so much stuff by yourself. Grandpa can still do some work. I'll help you carry it. Xiang Qingde worried his grandson might exhaust himself, as moving was indeed laborious. Xiang Beifei couldn't help but laugh and cry, Grandpa, why do I always feel like you forget I'm a martial artist? So what if you're a martial artist? Many martial artists still need to hire people when they move, Xiang Qingde said. Xiang Beifei stomped his foot again, and all the already packed boxes floated up, hovering midair. Light as a feather. He made the items lighter, then used his spiritual power to pull them all up. Xiang Qingde looked on in amazement. I didn't know you had this ability. Xiang Beifei realized he rarely discussed his abilities with his grandfather. He laughed, let the items down, then glanced at the ceiling camera again and said, Don't worry, from now on, I'll handle everything. Grandpa just needs to rest. Xiang Qingde paused, staring blankly at Xiang Beifei. Once upon a time, he had always been careful to protect his grandson. His self-esteem, telling him to keep an upbeat attitude and not to give up on himself. But ever since awakening his system, his grandson seemed like a changed person. Being a celebrity must be exhausting, right? I heard you have to shoot different films every day. Lu Jiwei said curiously. That won't do. Xiaofei needs to practice. Lu Hong said seriously. Unconsciously, he had started referring to Beifei as Xiaofei, as in his mind, Xiang Beifei was still a martial artist and should primarily focus on his training. Chun Xiuqin walked in from outside and laughed. I can't tell you how many calls I've received these past few days from talent agencies. They know I'm acquainted with Xiaofei and have been asking about his willingness to sign up for various commercial activities, offering big money. What did you say? Kong Daming asked. Of course, I said I would consider it. Chun Xiuqin laughed. How could I decide something like that on my own? I still need to ask Xiaofei's opinion. She didn't agree outright, but she didn't flatly refuse either, leaving some room for Xiang Beifei to choose. Xiang Beifei pondered for a moment, then said, I do need to practice, and I don't have time for filming commercials. However, when I have time, I could start a column specifically to teach everyone how to kill desolate beasts, so they won't panic when they encounter such situations. He needed to use this identity to properly guide everyone. Lu Hong's eyes brightened, and he nodded. Right. Many civilians, because they live in inland cities, have a very superficial concept of desolate beasts, and most lack a sense of crisis. Your idea is good. Formidable desolate beasts are common for martial artists, but not so for civilians. As a martial artist, it is only natural for Xiang Beifei to engage in such promotional activities. That's excellent. I'll help you with the publicity. As a celebrity, you need to specialize in one area, and as a martial artist, you should do it the martial artist's way. Chun Xiuqin was also half in the entertainment industry. Having dealt with many celebrities, she knew exactly how to handle marketing. Being Xiang Beifei's #1 fan, she was more than happy to help him. So it was settled. Xiang Beifei didn't need to do much. When the next semester started, he would simply shoot a few videos while on a mission in the outer wilds. It was quite a simple task. But then again, does she really think she can use my fame however she wants? The last person who tried to exploit Xiang Beifei's fame for profit had already been dealt with by him. This time, trying to make decisions without consulting him, deliberately pushing him into the limelight, was clearly intentional. The Alliance's purpose in exposing such a genius was quite apparent. The main reason lay in the fact that Xiang Beifei was trained by Elder Luo. Elder Luo's relationship with the Alliance was not good. The Alliance even feared him because they could not suppress such an SR-level awakener who did not follow their commands, worrying that Elder Luo might build his own forces at Liangzhou University. The emergence of a genius like Xiang Beifei posed an even greater threat to them. That's why they targeted Xiang Beifei. Once a normal person is exposed, It's hard for them to keep a low profile anymore. Wherever they go, they attract attention. By exposing Xiang Beifei like this, they forced him to stand with the alliance, making him watched by the entire Zhuzhou, thereby limiting his ability to covertly oppose the alliance. His every move was under the alliance's scrutiny. Whatever arrangement the alliance made afterward, Xiang Beifei would have to comply. From the alliance's perspective, Xiang Beifei would become a chess piece to control Elder Luo, to isolate him in a special way, monitor him, and weaken his influence. But does Mu Yiqing really believe I will obediently comply and act according to her ideas? Being the standard for an N-level awakener means that the initiative is now in my hands. Xiang Beifei. Is his name the way out of the withered forest? Coincidence? Or? Xiang Beifei felt very unreal. His long-missing father, who he had never met, had named him at a time when he must have been just an infant. How was he so sure he would encounter Yu Meng? Had his father just casually decided on his son's name? Could he have taken naming a bit more seriously? This SSR-level system awakener possessed the ability to establish rules. Anyone or anything around her that complied with the rules would increase her system value, and acting according to the established rules could also increase her system value. In short, as long as there were rules in a place, she could become stronger. Those who did not follow the rules had nowhere to hide in her presence. Xiang Beifei was looking at Mu Yiqing's system log, which listed a plethora of incidents involving her handling of rules, one of which read, "You have drafted the Zhuzhou policy on SR talent recruitment planning, approved by the Alliance Planning Minister Zhu Yiji, issued as a regulation, with currently 2,546 people adhering to this rule. Your rule value plus 2,546. The planning department of the Zhuzhou Alliance was responsible for crafting and amending various systems to manage every aspect of the alliance, planning the development of Zhuzhou. Simply put, as a UR-level Zhu Yiji was there to set the rules. Xiang Beifei had just learned of Zhu Yiji's position in the alliance. Those who set the rules, leading by breaking them, even pulling their own grandson out of prison. It was truly astounding. That said, Mu Yiqing also belonged to Zhu Yiji. It was yet unknown whether she was involved in the matter where Zhu Xinjue, who was supposed to be sentenced to death, was disguised, reborn, and escaped from prison. Xiang Beifei soon came across a system log from September. You revised the regulations on SR Awakener's bail application. This rule currently applies to only one person, your rule value plus 1. It seems pretty much certain, he muttered. Xiang Beifei's brow furrowed slightly. Her system, whenever she amended the rules, would add as much to her rule value as the number of people it affected. For example, last time she participated in revising a student recruitment system in Zhuzhou, which directly affected 5 million college entrance examination students in Zhuzhou, her system value spiked by 5 million. Logically, with this system, Mu Yiqing should adhere to various rules. However, Xiang Beifei quickly thought again. What are rules? Rules are merely set by humans. Since they are set by humans, they can naturally be amended by humans as well. The amended rules are still rules and still fit the criteria of her system. Thus, the higher she stood in the alliance, the easier it would be to hold all the rules in her own hands, and her word-spirit rule system, supposedly operating by rules to become stronger, actually equated to acting as she pleased. Otherwise, why say an SSR-level system is so powerful? Our two schools supported each other in the withered forest and jointly avoided danger, Xiang Beifei said. Then turning to Ren Zhonghai, added, We also encountered a student from your Qingzhou University on our way. You can just ask him. Yes, we nearly were caught. The other side's Zhu Yiji showed a look of astonishment in his eyes. Due to his identity, he had never taken action to interfere, only setting the square and round rules under everyone's feet to prevent them from intervening. This naturally included Professor Guo and Sun Hushuan. Zhu Yiji could not let these two help Yi Changfeng and Xiang Beifei, for once Sun Hushuan and Professor Guo intervened, the situation would certainly change. Thus, he tightly bound these two men, relying not only on the system but also on spiritual power. However, for some reason, Professor Guo had broken free from his square and round rules, escaping the blockade of spiritual power. This greatly shocked Zhu Yiji. His cultivation was stronger than Professor Guo's, and his system level was also higher than Professor Guo's. Logically, Professor Guo should not have been able to break free, yet why had Professor Guo suddenly become so powerful? He could not understand. Professor Guo's expression was cold as he faced He Kai-wei. An intense aura enveloped him, robust and unbreakable. The square and round rules were broken by Xiaohe, but the spiritual power bond was forcibly shattered by Professor Guo himself. Though Professor Guo looked very tired, his fatigue was mixed with an uncontainable rage. His own SSR-rank student, Wu Shixian, brought outsiders to slander him, and the Alliance treated him as a criminal. Even after the truth was revealed, Chao Pei decided to deal with it without inquiring him, intending to just let the matter slip away. Professor Guo had never been one to recklessly engage in conflicts or to enjoy manipulative games. He did not like to speculate about the thoughts of others. His abilities were meant for the desolate beasts. He always believed that the true purpose of a martial artist was to guard the borders and fight against the desolate beasts. So he had endured many things, even if Wu Shixian had previously issued some unreasonable border regulations surreptitiously. He would not comment. For him, teaching and guarding the borders were the two most important things in his life. As long as he could do these two things, he would not care about the rest. Yet everything today seemed like a joke in his eyes, provoking him and making him feel unbearably oppressed. Yi Changfeng and Xiang Beifei both stood up for him, seeking to get justice for him, confronting those who were framing him unjustly, and standing against Chao Pei, who only cared about his own reputation and not the students' futures. Even though they knew they were no match, they still stood up to speak for him, to do something for him. How could he remain silent any longer? Professor Guo's anger had been building up, and upon seeing He Kai-wei move against Xiang Beifei and Yi Changfeng, he finally broke through Zhu Yiji's bindings. It was as if a slumbering dragon had opened its eyes, striving to break free from the shackles that bound it. Zhu Yiji's spiritual power bondage was indeed powerful, but Zhu Yiji would never have imagined that the fire of conviction could be even more terrifying. Professor Guo's whole demeanor turned fiery, causing even Zhu Yiji a bit of trepidation. Guo Zhenghong, being a subordinate, how dare you defy me? He Kai-wei was pushed back, his heart unable to contain his anger. After all, he was the commander of the Alliance Beast Tide Defense Department, Guo Zhenghong's direct superior, a UR-ranked awakener. How could he allow himself to be repulsed by an SR-ranked subordinate in front of everyone? However, Professor Guo merely looked at He Kai-wei indifferently and said slowly, what are you worth? He had long understood that blindly giving way only allowed others to become more aggressive. He had always believed that cultivation was not the key determinant of one's position, that a person in a high position must have his reasons, his capabilities, and not just because of high cultivation. So when Wu Shixian rose above him, becoming his superior, he was genuinely happy for Wu Shixian, believing his talents were recognized by the Alliance, and even if his cultivation was only at the early stages of God refining, occupying that position was fine because he could support Wu Shixian to be a good leader. When He Kai-wei became the commander of the Alliance Beast Tide Defense Department, he had no objections, believing that He Kai-wei was seated there through his own capabilities, that the Alliance appointed He Kai-wei because of his ability to manage and coordinate the overall situation. But Professor Guo now saw through it all. This group had no bottom line. They were not seated there by their talents and virtues but by various means, acting unscrupulously and exploiting opportunities. They abused their power, removed dissenters and framed others. Such people were utterly unworthy of their high positions. In my eyes, there is only one true commander of the Alliance Beast Tide Defense Department. Professor Guo looked at He Kai-wei, his voice steady and strong. And that person is not you. He said so. Able ones are like hidden gems in the ocean, obscured by the world. The inept, however, are in cahoots, squandering their responsibilities. The one truly capable of leading all martial artists to resist the tide of beasts, upright and able to single-handedly repel the tide of beasts, saving the entirety of Jojo. But he was sidelined by the Alliance leadership for slaying a disobedient SSR-ranked military officer. If he had not chosen to retire, how could He Kai-wei, a lowly person, climb to such a high rank? The golden age is discarded. Mediocrity thunders like pots and tiles. This is the current state of the Juzhou Alliance. Guo Zhenghong, you are courting death. He Kaiwei was furiously embarrassed. How could he not realize who the someone Professor Guo was referring to? Luo Yunxian, a legendary figure, like a dazzling star, commanding the reverence of everyone in the alliance. And he, as Luo Yunxian's successor, was always living in Luo Yunxian's shadow. Although he had been in this position for 5 years, many people, when mentioning the Alliance Beast Tide Defense Commander, would first think of someone else, not him, someone who had retired 5 years ago. The one who did nothing but lounged in the woods of Liangzhou University for 5 years. Yet his prestige still hadn't diminished. This infuriated He Kaiwei. He was only younger than Luo Yunxian, but reaching Luo Yunxian's level was only a matter of time. In terms of system talent, he was a supreme UR grade, far surpassing the SR grade Luo Yunxian by leagues. But he still couldn't win everyone's approval. He couldn't understand, he wasn't inferior to Luo Yunxian in any aspect, so why should that SR grade shine so brightly? And why did this SR subordinate dare to utter these words in front of him? He Kaiwei was seething with rage, murderous intent already apparent in his eyes. Buzz. He stepped forward, and his spatial abilities surged out instantly, enveloping the entire meeting room and pulling Professor Guo and the other two into the system space he created. This was a school where just now, Yi Changfeng and Xiang Beifei had clashed with Chao Pei, causing a huge commotion. Countless students were heading this way, wanting to know what was happening here. But the events here, He Kaiwei absolutely couldn't let the students of Liangzhou University know. Violent system space fluctuations rippled, and in an instant the surroundings dramatically changed. They were now in a desert, with sand everywhere, and the wind howled fiercely. Boom! Boom! Giant lightning bolts, thick as pillars, constantly thundered down from the sky, striking the ground and making it buzz. Countless bolts roared, incessantly blasting down as if in a frenzied sea of thunder. You three, just go die. He Kaiwei's gaze especially fell on Xiang Beifei. Now, there were only the 4 of them left in this world, with even Chao Pei gone. Even if he killed these 3 people here with no one to see, he could completely fabricate the facts, claiming that the 3 had attempted a coup, tried to assassinate the Alliance Beast Tide Defense Commander, and he executed them on the spot. Boom! A ferocious might surged from He Kaiwei. His vicious aura soared to the sky. A gigantic black vortex appeared in the clouds above, filled with countless roaring thunders, thundering loudly, echoing He Kaiwei's calls. In his hand appeared a long spear. The spear was azure and translucent, carved with thunder patterns that coiled around it. Potent spiritual power circulated within the thunder patterns, like spreading electric light, crackling and hissing. This spear, named Thunder Roar, was He Kaiwei's most powerful reliance and the weapon he used to earn his reputation. It had been with him for over a decade. The powerful lightning array patterns on it were terrifying, sealing thousands of giant thunders, all collected from the thunder seas of the outer domains. With Thunder Roar unleashed, the entire heaven and earth changed color. Xiang Beifei furrowed his brows. This Thunder Roar, he could see from He Kaiwei's system interface, was a growth-type weapon, used by He Kaiwei ever since the beginning of his awakening system. Although it was a system weapon, Xiang Beifei couldn't control it, as it wasn't recently exchanged through He Kaiwei's system. Professor Guo, be careful.
Ye Changfeng whispered.
Even he could see the power of Thunder Roar. Just the spear light it emitted was enough to warp the space around it. Its contained aura was unimaginably terrifying. But Professor Guo was undaunted, his gaze sharp as he watched He Kaiwei, his posture still steady and upright. Go di. He Kaiwei's expression was fierce, and Thunder Roar responded instantly. Brilliant thunder surged from the sky, the blue electric light lighting up the entire desert, as all the desert's lightning columns were drawn to the spear. Boom! He Kaiwei slashed with the spear tip, and rolling thunders tore through the space, thundering toward Professor Guo's side. Professor Guo didn't move. He merely lifted his eyelids, a sharp light flashing in his eyes. Buzz! Sand suddenly appeared from all directions. This flying sand being the concentration of Professor Gua's own spiritual power, different from the desert sand. The sand roared, circling around him, forming a wall of sand. You think you can withstand my thunder roar? Hitsaiwei's spear pierced through the void, striking Professor Gua's sand wall with an explosion of sharp attacks. Layer upon layer of lightning compounded, forming fierce waves of assault that continuously bombarded the seemingly fragile sand wall. Boom! 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 In Hitsaiwei's eyes, his thunder roar was incredibly powerful. He himself had almost stepped into the heavenly connection realm. Thus, the attack created by his thunder roar was absolutely the strongest among those in the orifice transforming phase, and no martial artist at that stage could withstand this attack. However, Hitsaiwei's expression soon stiffened. Because countless bolts of lightning struck the seemingly weak sand wall, they seemed to hit cotton. The sand was very strange. It wasn't static, but constantly moving in a pattern. Each time the lightning struck a spot, countless grains of sand flowed, rubbing against each other, forming vortexes that guided the lightning. The imposing lightning was wrapped by these moving sands. Layer upon layer of lightning was redirected into the vortexes, quickly being devoured. In just a blink of an eye, the vast sea of lightning created by Hitsaiwei had disappeared into the sand wall surrounding Professor Gua. How could this be? Hitsaiwei's pupils shrank. In that instant, he could no longer feel the powerful attack generated by his thunder roar. It was as if all the attacks had sunk into the sea without a trace. Professor Gua stood there, immovable as a mountain. No matter how fierce Hitsaiwei's attacks were, he remained completely unshaken. The sand wall, seemingly insignificant, had blocked all the attacks from the outside. You are not worthy, Professor Gua coldly rebuked, and, in an instant, the swirling sand around him suddenly froze, but only for a second before the grains began moving again. However, this time, the sands moved in a completely opposite manner. Rumble. Roaring sounds emerged from the flying sand. Thunderous noises filled the air and blue lightning spread out from the sand wall. Then, with a loud bang, all the lightning started spinning and flowing backwards, redirecting towards Hitsaiwei. Hitsaiwei's face showed shock. The aura of these lightning bolts was clearly from him, originating from the same source as his thunder roar, but they were countered and sent back by Professor Gua. Countering. One of Professor Gua's most powerful abilities. However, Hitsaiwei soon calmed himself, sneering coldly. You use my lightning to attack me? You're too naive. Hitsaiwei disdainfully watched the lightning repelled by Professor Gua. No one knew better than him how his lightning worked. This ignorant old man, whose cultivation was inferior to his, thought he could defeat him by countering his lightning? Such wishful thinking. Hitsaiwei's thunder roar swept out once again. His deadly spear poised like a dragon, sweeping forward to meet the lightning repelled by Professor Gua. He intended to use the lightning patterns engraved on the thunder roar to reclaim those lightning bolts and use them for himself. However, as the lightning repelled by Professor Gua spread to his thunder roar, Hitsaiwei's expression suddenly changed. He now realized that the repelled lightning was different. Their flow was completely opposite to the attack method Hitsaiwei had used. This lightning might look similar, but it was actually another type of attack altogether. And the lightning patterns engraved on his thunder roar weren't simply able to absorb these lightning bolts. A transformation was needed, but he had led Professor Gua's counterattacking lightning into his spear's patterns without transforming it, instantly making the entire pattern's aura become chaotic. Crack, crack. Fissures began to appear on the patterns of the thunder roar, lines of cracks spreading all over the long spear as the lightning counterattacked by Professor Gua shook it to the core. What? Hitsaiwei was hugely shocked. He had never expected his thunder roar to encounter such a mishap. He looked at Professor Gua, filled with shock and fury, unable to accept this reality. How could a lowly SR-ranked system shatter his supreme UR-ranked thunder roar? From the look of things on the scene, those hostile towards Xiang Beifei were too many, and even the rational ones who spoke up risked becoming targets of attack. Lu Jiwei was very angry. Someone from their detective agency was looking for her. telling her not to stir up trouble. But Lu Jiwei was not someone who shied away from problems. She was arguing her case with the other party. Lu Jiwei, if you continue to cover for this N-level person, our detective agency will have to draw a clear line with you. A male student with a crew cut said. Draw the line then. Do you think I care? Lu Jiwei, irritated, clenched her fists and declared, Come on. I'm putting it out there today. If anyone dares to touch a single hair on him, ask my fists. Lu Jiwei, if you really want to fight, why not fight me? A male student stepped forward, looking at Lu Jiwei. This male student was also a late-stage master of chi controlling. Lu Jiwei watched him warily. This person was clearly not someone easy to provoke, but she did not back down. However, the expression on Zhuo Jing's face looked terrible. Xiang Beifei had now become the center of attention. His lucky score of 581 could no longer attract anyone's praise. He had to actively seek praise. So what if your score is high? It's as if you can get into an elite university. Zhuo Jing spat out in jealousy. Of the 9 elite universities, only Liangzhou University would admit N-level awakeners. But even Liangzhou University, faced with N-level students, would set a high entry threshold and not easily let them pass. As for him, Zhuo Jing, his score was more than sufficient for elite universities. Zhuo Jing looked at his system panel, where his appreciation value had reached 5,129, enough to exchange for the piercing strike cultivation technique. Another task required a score of 550 and 2,000 appreciations to exchange for the double appreciation card, which he had also completed. But he was not in a hurry to exchange. It was not the moment to exchange cultivation techniques. Everyone was focused here, and he wanted to seize the opportunity to earn more appreciation value. Soon, he thought of another way to attract everyone's attention. That's right, my score is more than enough to get into any of the 9 elite universities. After all, I am S-level, not N-level. It's too easy for me to get into an elite university, but elite universities don't admit N-levels. Zhuo Jing said these words loudly to a friend next to him, making no attempt to hide the pride in his voice. Originally, a crowd was watching Xiang Beifei, but upon hearing Zhuo Jing's words, they pondered a bit and then realized the issue. Right? What does it matter if Xiang Beifei was the top scholar in school? He was only N-level, and normally, elite universities do not admit N-level students. Even the only exception, Liangzhou University, had not admitted N-level students for the past 10 years. The entry threshold set by elite universities for N-level students is extremely high. Many people were swayed by Zhuo Jing's words, and the way they looked at Xiang Beifei changed instantly, their praise mixed with pity. It was really too bad. Even an S-level with only 500 points could easily get in, but a high school exam score of 732 was still shut out of the elite universities. Everyone was sighing. The system's innate talent determined the university's threshold. That's just how realistic this world is. But everyone understood that this situation existed because the N-level system was too outrageous, releasing system tasks that didn't make sense and lacked potential. In this world, one profound truth is, studying needs to be applied practically. A good system allows you to utilize your knowledge more proficiently. For an outrageous system like N-level, even if you understand a lot of knowledge from books, it is very difficult to complete the system tasks and achieve the purpose of applying knowledge practically. Put simply, your academic performance determines your fundamental lower limit, while the level of your system talent determines your future upper limit. In the world of systems, high academic scores only mean that your understanding of the world is deeper than normal people, but it doesn't mean your future achievements will be higher than others. If one were to compare a person to a tree, then an awakener system is like the fertilizer that helps grow the tree. An N-level system's fertilizer can only let the tree grow up to 1 meter, but an R-level might let it grow to 10 meters, and an S-level could allow it to grow to 100 meters. As for SR and SSR levels, they could cultivate a person into a towering giant tree. And the 9 elite universities, as the name suggests, nurture students who have high future potential. It's a pity for such a promising seed. If only his system were R-level. One person couldn't help but lament. Yes, it's such a pity. Others chimed in with sympathy, pity, Schadenfreude, various looks were directed at him. Even though there was still a small hope for N-level candidates at Liangzhou University, it was very slim. Because that assessment, as legend has it, is an insurmountable barrier for N-levels. Who would have thought that a top scholar with a score of 732 would face such an embarrassing situation? Meanwhile, people were becoming more optimistic about Zhuo Jing. Though his score was only 581, over 100 points less than Xiang Beifei's, the fact was that he was S-level. With such results, he could securely enter any of the 9 elite universities and choose a good major. The class president is really impressive. Which of the 9 elite universities is the class president planning to choose? Someone asked enviously. Is that even a question? With his additional points, he has a total score of 631. He can pick from any of the 9 elite universities. Yeah. An S-level score of 631 is way stronger than an N-level score of 732. You've received praise from Kong. Appreciation value +2. You've received praise from Lulan. Appreciation value +2. Seizing the opportunity, Zhuo Jing harvested a wave of appreciation value, and he felt refreshed and invigorated. He pretended to be modest and said, "Oh, you're all too kind. I've already set my goal. As a member of Liangzhou, I plan to stay here and apply to Liangzhou University." In fact, applying to Liangzhou University was a spur-of-the-moment decision. Xiang Beifei's usual grades were nowhere near his, but his college entrance exam score had surpassed him, which really annoyed him. He knew that Liangzhou University was the only elite university Xiang Beifei could possibly apply to, so he had to choose Liangzhou University. Xiang Beifei was bound to be eliminated by Liangzhou University during the entrance examination. But right now, choosing any elite university meant being a prospective student of that university. A score of 581 got into Liangzhou University, 732 got rejected at the door. Such a stark contrast that made him, an S-level high achiever, stand out even more. Many people nodded slightly, appreciating what Zhuo Jing said. Zhuo Jing looked at Xiang Beifei with a sidelong, arrogant glance. So what if you're the top scholar of the school? So what if you have the highest original score? My score of 581 will still annihilate your future. It will still steal your thunder. It will still shift everyone's gaze from you to me. Jealous, aren't you? Haha. Not only did I complete the system task, but I also overshadowed the top scholar of the school and earned a lot of appreciation value. Thrilling. Zhuo Jing hummed a tune to himself. Now it was time to receive the system rewards. He happily looked at the system interface, eyeing the double appreciation card and the piercing strike cultivation technique. Then he clicked on Receive Reward. 1 minute later. Where are my system rewards? Zhuo Jing suddenly turned to stone on the spot. Damn system. You actually swallowed my reward again. Zhuo Jing felt darkness before his eyes and nearly passed out. Although Zhuo Jing was an S-level awakener, he had only awakened his system 2 months ago, and his cultivation was still only at the early stages of Qi controlling. Thus, the 2 system rewards of Piercing Strike and Double Appreciation Card were also for the early stages of Qi controlling. These types of rewards were something Xiang Beifei wouldn't even bother with, but he happily accepted them. The reason was simple: he was delighted. To those with whom he had no grudges, if their rewards were mistakenly taken by Xiaohe, he would return them. He respected people who were good to him and would do his best to help them. But for those who sought trouble with him, who bullied him to his face, there was no need for courtesy. If he couldn't use it himself, he could feed it to a dog. Xiaohe, a little milk dog with snow-white fur, happily swallowed the 2 items, turning them into spiritual Qi crystals and collected them. Damn system. Damn system. Zhuo Jing was on the verge of madness, still unaware of what had happened. Because his system had malfunctioned before, he thought it had crashed today as well, and had there not been so many people around, he would have cursed at his system already. Little did he know, his rewards had indeed ended up in the paws of a little milk dog. Because of Zhuo Jing's speech, many people no longer envied Xiang Beifei, the top scholar of the school, and their attention gradually shifted to other S-level students. This actually relieved Xiang Beifei. He didn't enjoy being the center of attention. The crowd quickly dispersed, and other school leaders went to congratulate other students. Only Principal Li Nanqing stayed, his expectation for Xiang Beifei unwavering. Li Nanqing's expression turned serious when he mentioned the Outer Desolate Lands. The Outer Desolate Lands, beyond the territory of Zhuzhou, were filled with various dangerous and powerful desolate beasts, ferocious and terrifying. The task of the frontier expanders is to eliminate the desolate beasts of a region, and then expand the territory of Zhuzhou, securing more living space for humanity. This is a very daunting task, as desolate beasts are not so easily destroyed. On the contrary, it's more common for the expanders to be encircled and killed by the desolate beasts. This is also why the profession of a frontier expander holds such a high status. They fight for humanity's living space, nearly tying their own lives to their belts. In Zhuzhou, if one's cultivation hasn't reached the meridian opening realm, they are generally not allowed to venture into the outer desolate wilds, because those in the qi-controlling realm who go there are no different from seeking death. I don't understand what the people at Liangzhou University are thinking, setting such an entrance examination, Li Nanqing said with dissatisfaction. This clearly amounted to displaying the words reject N-level awakeners from enrollment, for everyone to see. But he was just a high school principal and could not influence the affairs of Liangzhou University. No matter how unfair he felt, he could not do anything about it. Of course, you don't have to worry. You are not a qi-controlling practitioner, so the test they have set for you should be in a simulation training ground. Elite universities have simulation facilities, that's where they will, Li Nanqing explained. Xiang Beifei fell into deep thought. An entrance examination, is it going into the outer desolate wilds? His parents had gone to the outer desolate wilds and never returned. What exactly was that place like? He had yet to visit himself. This world is closely connected with the outer desolate wilds. Yet Xiang Beifei's current experience still only scratched the surface. The college entrance examination scores of Luhe High School students were released one by one. Some rejoiced, some were despondent, with scores of 300, 400, and each person's expression varied. Currently, the highest scorer was named Xinyu. He had awakened the S-level academic god system, and scored 667 points without any bonus points, from Class 1. At this time, Kong Xiuan's score was also revealed. Kong Xiuan, S-level, Language 101, Mathematics 103, Integrated Science 191, Introduction to Defense of Zhuzhou 118, total score 513. Kong Xiuan was overjoyed. Ah! I scored 500 points. He frantically clutched at his hair. He had gone all out these days to reach 500 points, exchanging all the hair he had lost for system rewards to increase his intelligence, and at last it had paid off. 513 plus the 50 points bonus, 563 points. This score was more than enough to get into an elite university. Congratulations, Xiang Beifei said. Thank you. I didn't expect to perform so well. Kong Xiuan was extremely excited, but quickly suppressed his enthusiasm and asked, "How confident are you? Last time you said we would go to Liangzhou University together. I've done it. Now I'm waiting for you. Don't let me down." "Let's wait until the results come out," Xiang Beifei replied. "Son, you did it." A chubby, middle-aged man squeezed through the crowd. His figure was robust, easily pushing through the throng and hugging Kong Xiuan excitedly, almost knocking him over with his round belly. This was Kong Xiuan's father, Kong Daming. Host, Kong Daming. S-level, gluttonous feast system. Realm, early meridian opening. Kong Daming was in the catering business. His cooking skills were extraordinary, turning even a simple cabbage dish into a mouth-watering delicacy. "Dad, be a bit more reserved," Kong Xiuan said, holding his stomach which had been bumped painfully, but unable to hide his excitement, letting his father's large hand rub back and forth over his head. "Hello, Uncle Kong," Xiang Beifei greeted politely. "Ha-ha. Good, good. It's been so long since I've seen you, Xiaofei." Kong Daming laughed heartily, then turned to greet Xiang Qingde. Old master, how's your health? Still good. Congratulations, Daming, Xiang Qingde managed to say with a smile. Ha ha. Thank you, thank you. My Showin has made it. By the way, has Xiaofei's score come out yet? Kong Daming asked. It should be out soon. Xiang Qingde's mind inadvertently conjured the image of the 43-point paper and he sighed silently. Xiaofei, you've got to do your best. You two have played together since childhood, have always been in the same class. I hope you can go to the same university, Kong Daming said cheerfully. Hopefully, Xiang Qingde could only reply, inwardly sighing again. Kong Showin was an S-level awakener, and a score of 500 could get him into an elite university, but Xiang Beifei was N-level and his scores were so poor. Haha, that's great. To celebrate my son's excellent results. I'm not doing business tonight, just preparing a celebration feast for you all. Old master, you must come too. Kong Daming and Xiang Tianqing used to be classmates, and since Xiang Tianqing's misfortune, he often took care of the grandfather and grandson, always telling them to eat for free at his restaurant. However, the Xiangs rarely accepted. Even though their income was low, they didn't want to take handouts. Kong Daming understood this, so he changed tactics, often sending some meat to Xiang Qingde's house for them to cook themselves. Boom! 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 Punch after punch. Even though Commander He Kaiwei desperately used his spiritual power to resist, he was still beaten into a pitiful state. The fists that Professor Guo formed from condensed sand tore through the spatial system created by He Kaiwei, creating crack after crack. Outside, people like Chao Pei could see through those broken spatial cracks and were shocked when they saw He Kaiwei lying on the ground like a dead dog, beaten powerlessly by Professor Guo. Is this really a professor from their school? The very president of Liangzhou University, unaware of the terrifying powerhouse, Professor Guo, within his own faculty. That's He Kaiwei. You are ranked Commander He, the chief commander of the Alliance Beast Tide Defense Department. Only a person with extremely powerful and terrifying strength is qualified to sit in this position. That was also the reason Chao Pei had always tried to please He Kaiwei. However, now Chao Pei realized, in front of the truly fearsome Professor Guo, this so-called Commander He is nothing at all. Professor Guo had always worked on the frontier, barely ever engaging in hand-to-hand combat or conflicts with anyone apart from being strict with students, and was otherwise known for his good temperament. His usual opponents were desolate beasts, which led many to overlook his strength. How can Professor Guo be so strong? As a practitioner of the literary Tao, Chao Pei had only been transferred from the Alliance to take the position of president at Liangzhou University a few years ago, overseeing both the Liberal Arts College and the Martial Arts College. He only cared about SSR and UR Awakeners. These were the people he felt he needed to pay attention to. He never truly understood Professor Guo's actual strength, thinking of him only as a straightforward SR-ranked senior professor with no status in the Alliance and mediocre power, who spent his life working for SSR and UR without ever making waves. However, today he realized just how ridiculously wrong he had been. Their school was actually harboring such a quietly formidable senior professor. The professor who usually did nothing but teach at school and patrol the frontier had such terrifying prowess. He was just a commander on the fringe line of the Liangzhou Beast Tide defense, yet he was able to hang Commander He Kaiwei up and beat him senseless. Boom! 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 With every punch Professor Guo threw, Chao Pei gasped in shock. UR-ranked commander, he looked like a ragged doll, powerless to retaliate, beaten punch after punch. As Chao Pei thought about how he had just tried to offer Commander He a way out, ignoring how Professor Guo had been framed, his back broke out in a cold sweat. At this moment, Professor Guo looked grim, but it was evident he was extremely angry. Each punch landed on He Kaiwei felt like it was hitting Chao Pei's chest, making it difficult for Chao Pei to breathe. He deeply regretted not having understood Professor Guo's true strength, regretted not speaking up for Professor Guo earlier, and moreover, having trivialized the matter. If Commander He wasn't a match for Professor Guo, then he, as the president of Liangzhou University, facing Professor Guo, would probably be nothing before his gaze. Wu Shixian beside him was scared out of his wits. As an SSR, he had always looked down on Professor Guo, thinking that UR Hikaiwei was the real powerhouse. Yet, the powerhouse he relied on was beaten so badly by Professor Guo that even his own mother wouldn't recognize him. Thinking about how he had tried to frame Professor Guo, Wu Shixian trembled with fear. "Stop!" Zhu Yiji, who had been watching from the outside, sensed something was off, forcefully tore through the spatial system, and upon seeing Hikaiwei being beaten on the ground, he exclaimed in rage, "Guozhenghong, you dare to disrespect and attack the leadership of the alliance." However, Professor Guo just coldly glanced at Zhu Yiji, said nothing, and threw another punch at Hikaiwei, smashing him into the ground. "You are out of line." Zhu Yiji, seeing that Professor Guo had disregarded him, became furious. With a wave of his hand, a square and round rule instantly enveloped Professor Guo, disrespecting superiors, clashing with leadership, plotting against an important official of the alliance, disregarding the laws of Jiuzhou. "I want you to kneel and admit your mistake," Zhu Yiji shouted. As a practitioner of the Heavenly Connection realm, his strength was much greater than that of Hikaiwei. His stern shout and the black square and round rule-shaped law confined Professor Guo within. His square and round rules demanded Professor Guo to kneel. Yet, Professor Guo still turned a blind eye and landed another punch on Hikaiwei's chest. "This punch is for the delay you caused to the students of the Martial Arts College at Liangzhou University." His voice was still stern. Boom! Hikaiwei roared and was smashed into the ground again. Zhu Yiji was astonished. Professor Guo had once again disregarded his square and round rules. No, there weren't many who could ignore his square and round rules, which were akin to a form of mental control. Once someone was bound by his square and round, if they weren't sufficiently defensively mentally, they had to act according to his rules. With his Heavenly Connection realm prowess, there weren't many in the alliance who could withstand his rules, which was why he had been able to dominate the alliance. However, 3 times today, his square and round rules had been broken, which was utterly baffling. His gaze swept over the trio, Professor Guo, who had the strength to defeat Hikaiwei, Yi Changfeng with his sharp and potent sword qi, and Xiang Beifei with his peculiarly rapid talent progression. Zhu Yiji suddenly realized who was most likely to be capable of this. Luo Yunxian. In the entire alliance, less than 10 people could ignore his square and round rules, and these 10 were all UR level masters. But it was SR level Luo Yunxian that was the most troublesome to him. He was the only SR capable of withstanding his square and round rules. These 3 must be under the protection left by Luo Yunxian. Damn it! That guy disappeared and still left such strong protection. Zhu Yiji was seething with resentment, and soon a hint of murderous intent flashed in his eyes. These 3 were challenging his authority so brazenly, disregarding his words, as if he had come here to play the role of an impartial official today. "Guozhenghong, stop right now." Zhu Yiji was furious, and the spiritual power surged around him, instantly forming a giant palm in front of him that slapped down towards Professor Guo. Professor Guo furrowed his brow slightly and stopped his sand fist, turning to look at the palm strike descending from the sky. The strike was so massive that it obscured the sky and wielded overwhelming power, contorting and cracking the entire space created by Hikaiwei, revealing the Liangzhou University campus through the cracks. This was the might of a Heavenly Connection realm expert, so tremendously powerful. This palm strike was far beyond what could be resisted by someone in the orifice transforming stage. It was more than 10 times stronger than Hikaiwei's earlier attack. Xiang Beifei's expression also grew solemn. This palm strike from Zhu Yiji wasn't just for show. But there was nothing he could do, as Zhu Yiji didn't use the square and round rules. So this level of battle was beyond his ability to intervene. "Professor Guo," Yi Changfeng called out urgently. "Don't panic. Stand behind me," Professor Guo commanded coolly. The flying sand around him gathered once more, rapidly spinning in front of him, with the ferocious sandstorm rotating at an unimaginable speed, making the flying sand seem like brown beams of light around him. The faster the sand spun, the more solid the light beams became. The speed of the sand was so extreme that it almost materialized, and the air howled as it was sliced by the sand, creating more cracks in the space created by Hikai Wei. The battlefield of their clash began to burst, and the erupting aura seeped through the cracks into the Liangzhou University campus. However, Professor Guo's flying sand did more than tearing through Hikai system space. It also created layers upon layers of black vortexes around him. There was an incredibly powerful and strange suction force pulsating within the cracks, akin to black holes. At this moment, the terrifying palm of Zhu Yiji had fallen from the sky, slamming onto the outer defenses of Professor Guo. The frightening spiritual power of the heavenly connection realm violently compressed Professor Guo's flying sand, infiltrating it, intending to directly annihilate his defenses. Nevertheless, Professor Guo's spinning sand persisted, the outermost layer quickly extinguished by Zhu Yiji. But as it did, it also took a bit of the power from Zhu Yiji's palm wind. Layer upon layer of flying sand perished, but the vortexes alongside were also consuming Zhu Yiji's palm wind. Each grain of sand carried away a shred of force, and the sheer volume of the weakening by countless grains was terrifying. When Zhu Yiji's palm wind eradicated all the flying sand, half of his power had already been wiped out, but the heavenly connection realm was still too strong and hadn't been completely erased. The remaining palm wind continued to bear down on Professor Guo, who also struck forward with a palm of his own. Boom! The two mighty palm strikes collided, unleashing terrible fluctuations. Shock waves violently sprayed outward, sweeping through the space created by Hikai Wei, destroying everything in their path. The space could no longer hold together and completely collapsed. Thud! Professor Guo, with spiritual power surging around him, forcefully dispersed Zhu Yiji's attack, but he too staggered back a step. Blood stained the corner of his mouth. How powerful! Chao Pei and others present were shocked beyond measure. It was one thing for Professor Guo to defeat Hikai Wei, but to withstand a palm strike from Zhu Yiji? Zhu Yiji's strength was that of a bona fide heavenly connection realm cultivator. Incomparable to the orifice transforming stage, he was countless times stronger than the late stage Hikai Wei. However, after clashing with Zhu Yiji, Professor Guo, who was in the middle stage of orifice transforming, merely stepped back one step and sustained only a minor injury without even a change of expression on his face. Was Professor Guo's defense ability really so terrifying? This person is probably the strongest defensive type awakener in the Alliance. Even Zhu Yiji couldn't help but think to himself, his heart shaking from the defensive power of Professor Guo. Unlike Hikai Wei and Chao Pei, Zhu Yiji had a slight understanding of Professor Guo's past. Although he had never seen Professor Guo fight anyone in the past, during the Desolate Beast Tide, the areas where Professor Guo was present were never breached. In the past, Zhu Yiji thought Professor Guo was able to withstand the Beast Tide because he had a thorough knowledge of the Desolate Beasts, but only after today's combat with Professor Guo did he realize his defense had reached a terrifying level. Within the Alliance, it would likely be impossible to find another who could match Professor Guo's defense. If Professor Guo were to step into the later stage of orifice transformation, he probably could easily block even Zhu Yiji's fierce palm strike. But this only made Zhu Yiji even angrier. No matter how strong Professor Guo's defense was, he was still just at the middle stage of orifice transformation. If he, a heavenly connection realm figure, couldn't overcome him, wouldn't he become a laughingstock if word got out? But now that Hikai system space had been torn apart, they had returned to reality, and in front of so many people at Liangzhou University, Zhu Yiji needed to consider his own status. Not bad. Professor Guo gave a thumbs up, wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. His gaze fixed on Zhu Yiji, his expression still cold and solemn, showing no concern for the minor wounds. If that skill were used to kill desolate beasts instead of to set people up, then what would there be to fear from the Beast Tide? Professor Guo said coldly. Zhu Yiji's face turned an iron blue. You deserve to die. On the other side, Hikai Wei also clumsily climbed up from the ground, his body covered with bruises. Even though he had been brutally beaten by Professor Guo, as a martial artist in the later stage of orifice transforming, he had used his spiritual power to protect his vitals and managed to save his life. But even so, he suffered a terrible price. A broken arm, fractured ribs in the chest, displaced internal organs, and a thigh bone smashed and twisted, no one would have imagined that the once immaculately dressed and noble He Kaiwei could end up in such a state. He glared bitterly at Professor Guo, his murderous intent undiminished. If not for Zhu Yiji's intervention just now, he might have been even more seriously injured. Do you want to spend 8 million uniqueness value to exchange for a restoration pill to heal your injuries? Yes, He Kaiwei replied hatefully in his mind. You have successfully exchanged 8 million uniqueness value for a restoration pill. This pill will directly heal all current injuries of the host. This is the strength of a high-level system. No matter how severe the injury is, as long as it is not fatal, it can forcibly restore all injuries using system points. There won't be any after-effects. Once my injuries are healed, I will make you pay. As He Kaiwei waited for his injuries to heal, he plotted his revenge against Professor Guo in his mind. However, after waiting for a long time, he found that his body was still in a miserable condition, without any sign of his wounds healing. Where's the restoration pill? He Kaiwei roared in his mind. The restoration pill has taken effect. Healing is ongoing. Please wait patiently. He Kaiwei continued to wait. Healing failed. He could no longer stand. His legs had been broken by Professor Guo, and when he saw this message, shock and anger surged through him, and he collapsed on the ground with a bang. How could this be? How could his invincible restoration pill fail? Could it be that Professor Guo's methods were so powerful that even the restoration pill couldn't heal them? You and UR level were beaten by SR level Professor Guo to an extent that your wounds can't heal. Congratulations on setting a new record. This negative record will not count toward your uniqueness value. He Kaiwei saw the system suddenly pop up with this message and couldn't help but spit out another mouthful of blood. But after walking a short distance, a fork in the road suddenly appeared. Xiang Beifei's tracks reappeared at the fork, but then vanished once again on this new path. Which way should we go? Ho Chenggu asked Chen Baiwen in an urgent tone. I don't know. There are no tracks. Chen Baiwen shook his head. Forget it. Let's split up and take separate ways. It will be faster, Zhu Xinjue suggested. If we split up, we're dividing our strength. If we encounter Xiang Beifei, do you really think we stand a chance against him? Chen Baiwen questioned. Xiang Beifei is clearly being hunted by that desolate beast. If we run into him, how could we not have a chance? Zhu Xinjue retorted. After a brief discussion, they ultimately decided to go their separate ways, but all agreed that if they encountered Xiang Beifei, they would first send a signal to the others, and if they couldn't find anyone after half an hour, they would regroup at this location. To ensure mutual trust, they decided to mix the members from both parties. Zhu Xinjue and Yu Hongba, along with He Qiutong, took one path, while Chen Baiwen and Ho Chenggu took another. Ho Chenggu and Chen Baiwen took 3 SR members and went left. Chen Baiwen seemed preoccupied with heavy thoughts, but Ho Chenggu still cautioned, "Don't forget our agreement." Xiang Beifei faintly understood and said, "Digest memories?" A desolate beast, after devouring the brain of another desolate beast, can sometimes extract the memories of its prey, meaning that what the latter had seen and heard could be digested by the predator. If that green-haired caterpillar was crushed by Long Guoqing, it means that the caterpillar had seen Xiang Beifei and his people. Even if the green-haired caterpillar couldn't understand human language, the images and scenes would still be imprinted in its mind. What exactly did they say when they encountered the green-haired caterpillar, and did it commit those words to memory? To eat the brains of other desolate beasts in order to compensate for their own shortcomings, to expand their own knowledge. Thus, the more they consume, the greater their wisdom inevitably becomes. Desolate beasts with great strength but simple minds aren't frightening. The ones with high intelligence are the most terrifying. The question now is what sort of impression of themselves had the green-haired caterpillar, crushed by Long Guoqing, left behind. Li Zimu's stone cottage had many rooms built, with everyone separated by one another, without beds or blankets. Although quite Spartan, such details weren't too important in the harsh lands beyond the borders. When Xiang Beifei returned from his shift, Long Guoqing was leaning against the door, hands crossed in front of him, and he asked, Can I ask you a question? What is it? Xiang Beifei said. You're not an N-level awakener, are you? You're at least SR, right? Is that very important to you? It would make me feel better, Long Guoqing reluctantly admitted. If he had lost to the SR-ranked Li Zimu, he wouldn't feel too embarrassed. After all, the other's talent was no less than his. They were both SR-ranked, and if he lost, he could always win back the next time. But losing to an N-level awakener left a knot in his heart. That's your problem, not mine, Xiang Beifei said, not liking to explain his system to others, because he didn't have a system at all. We're a team. I've told you all about my abilities, but we know nothing about yours. If we're a team, there should be mutual understanding, Long Guoqing emphasized. Oh, now you admit we're a team? I thought you liked to show off, Xiang Beifei remarked. Long Guoqing snorted but didn't refute the point. He indeed liked to stand out because without doing so, he couldn't collect system points. If you tell me you're SR or SSR, I'd accept my defeat wholeheartedly, Long Guoqing declared. So you're looking down on those whose system level is lower than yours? What's wrong with being N level? Or R level? Or S level? Besides their cultivation level, how are they inferior to you in character, morality, or behavior? Do they deserve your contempt? Do you enjoy finding a sense of superiority over those with a lower system? Xiang Beifei spoke sternly. I. Long Guoqing was rendered speechless. He looked down on those less talented than himself, seeing them as having no future prospects, especially the lowly N-level awakeners. He only respected the strong. But his pride always seemed to be shattered by Xiang Beifei. Deep down, he hoped that Xiang Beifei's system was SR level or even SSR. Then, being defeated by Xiang Beifei wouldn't be too frustrating, and his long-held principles of pride could remain intact. But what he couldn't accept was the fact that Xiang Beifei might actually be an N-level. I just don't believe that an N-level awakener has such potential. With such a useless system, they'll only ever achieve so much. They couldn't possibly have such strength, Long Guoqing said through clenched teeth. Why can't an N-level awakener defeat an SR? How many people are there who can surpass Shang Tianxiong, also an N-level awakener? Someone truly capable can kill an SSR even if they are just SR. We all live in this world. We are all human. You are not nobler than anyone else. You merely have a higher starting point, but that doesn't mean you'll end up higher than others in the future. One should remain humble, Xiang Beifei spoke. After finishing his statement, Xiang Beifei went straight back to his own compartment. Humble, huh? Long Guoqing's face shifted between clouds and sunshine as he pondered Xiang Beifei's words. At around 9 in the evening, Yi Changfeng gathered everyone up. He had obtained the schedule and rules for the matches the next day. Elder Luo said, "We need to discuss tomorrow's situation first. Everyone must stay alert. The rules are clear to everyone already. The new student competition consists of individual challenges and group pioneering. In individual challenges, the 9 schools compete in a round-robin tournament, facing each other only once, meaning each school will fight 8 matches, for a total of 36 matches over 2 days. Whether the competitors are in the Meridian opening stage or the Qi controlling stage will be determined by a roll of dice. Tomorrow's schedule, the first match, is Jizhou University against Yenzhou University. Our match is not the first one up, which is good. Everyone can observe the strength of the other schools first. However, in the second match, it will be Qingzhou University against Liangzhou University. Yi Changfeng distributed a flyer to everyone, and they all looked at the schedule with solemn expressions. Yu Qixin, explain to them the current strength of each school this year, Elder Luo said. Yu Qixin glanced at Xiang Beifei expressionlessly before beginning his introduction. But it's stipulated that one person can only participate in up to 2 matches, so when the time comes, I'll need to analyze the situation with the other teachers before deciding how to allocate the order of appearance and opponents among you 5, he said. It's like Tianji's horse racing, but not quite the same. During Tianji's horse racing, there are 3 rounds where there's room to maneuver, but here, schools only face each other in one match. It's basically random. Normally, you'd hope that other schools would take on the strong students from different schools, using up their 2 chances, and by the time they face us, they can only field their weaker students. This is like with Qingzhou University and Liangzhou University. This year, Qingzhou University has 2 SSRs. Each has to fight in 2 matches, so the 2 SSRs can fight in, at most, 4 matches. Thus, Yi Changfeng hopes that Qingzhou University will use those 4 opportunities against the other 7 schools so that by the time they face us, the quota is used up, and only SRs can be sent into battle, increasing our chances of winning. However, all the schools are elite and the teachers in charge of the teams certainly understand this principle. So the allocation of fighters will be a psychological gambit. Before taking the stage, nobody can know whether the opponent will field a strong or weak player. You should understand by now, our school doesn't have an SSR this year, which means our strength is weaker than other schools. In the individual challenges, it will be difficult for you to gain an advantage, Yu Qixin said, his gaze fixed on Xiang Beifei. Apart from Qingzhou University, Yenzhou University, and Jizhou University, the other schools only have 1 SSR as well, only 1 Meridian opening stage student. We don't need to worry too much, especially since we have student Xiang Beifei, Shikiyao said timidly from the side. The situation isn't that simple, Elder Luo said. In the individual challenges, there are only 8 matches, 1 point per match, so the total score is very important. But have you considered, to secure a higher total score, the other schools will certainly find a way to secure their points. So, who are they nearly certain to get a point from? Long Guoqing and the others caught on. From us at Liangzhou University? Now, the other 8 schools have a common understanding. Liangzhou University doesn't have an SSR this year, which means no Meridian opening stage students. So, in order to secure an assured point, they will most certainly send their Meridian opening SSRs against us. Because if SSRs face other schools, sometimes they'll meet opponents who are also SSRs, all of whom are in the Meridian opening stage, and inevitably someone will lose. If you end up losing, it's not worth it. But now, all the schools think that all Liangzhou University students are only in the late Qi controlling stage. Therefore, sending a Meridian opening SSR to face a school with only Qi controlling stage students is almost a guaranteed win. Everyone wants to pick the soft persimmons first and secure a point. Yes, which means in every match we face, the opponents may all be Meridian opening SSRs. Elder Luo said, his tone laden with meaning. Everyone's expressions grew more solemn. Elder Luo said, "All right. Next you'll need to discuss among yourselves how to allocate those who take the field and how to break through this situation. Really? Why must they make this simple new student competition so complicated?" Ma Ziqian muttered on the side. For them, martial artists, the simplest approach would be to rush up and have a straightforward fight the most hassle-free way. Because this is also a form of tactic. Elder Luo said, when facing opponents with uneven strengths, how to arrange your players to break the deadlock and achieve more victories is a form of command strategy. The competitions at elite universities test not only martial power but also various abilities to adapt on the fly, such as how to make the most effective use of limited personnel. It's a test for the team leader and the freshmen alike. Cultivating this kind of thinking will also be applicable when facing a desolate beast tide in the future. The martial arts colleges at elite universities are all about training pioneers and guardians, which means the basic mindset is combat-oriented. When facing a desolate beast tide, the beast's strengths are uneven, so each school must train students on how to maximize combat effectiveness with efficient use of personnel. The rules of this freshman competition seem very unfair at first glance. There will be Meridian opening phase facing Qi controlling phase, and the fights are almost one-sided, failing to truly reflect the fresher's genuine strength. However, the truth is, when facing desolate beasts, there has never been any fairness. In battles with desolate beasts, most of the time the desolate beasts are a bit stronger. So how to achieve victory and earn the most points is actually a test of each university's tactical coordination abilities. Which battle to give up on, which one to go all out, who to send against different opponents, learning to make trade-offs, and playing psychological games with each other, it's a struggle not just of courage but also of wits. Although Elder Luo seems idle and often not very serious, he once served as the commander-in-chief of the Zheozhou Alliance in resisting the desolate beast tide, and his strategic vision in command of battle is incredibly formidable. He knows all too well the original intention behind these kinds of competitions among the 9 elite schools. That is to say, Elder Luo has an idea of how to break this situation, but instead of making it explicit, he wants Xiang Beifei's team to think it over for themselves first, as part of their training. If their ideas don't work, Elder Luo will then provide guidance. Hearing Elder Luo say this, nobody could continue to complain. Yi Changfeng and Yu Qixin were also sitting to one side, neither saying anything, but instead, they were looking at the 5 members of Xiang Beifei's team. Xiang Beifei and his team were silent. After a long while, Long Guocheng was the first to speak. In tomorrow's competition, our first match is in the second round against Qingzhou University. Facing Qingzhou University, we don't know who they will send to face us. Xiang Beifei said, "The person that Qingzhou University sends out tomorrow will definitely be Ho Chengguo, without any surprises." Long Guocheng asked, "Are you so sure? Qingzhou University has 2 SSRs, 1 UR, plus 2 SRs, and they haven't decided on the participants yet." Xiang Beifei said, "It will definitely be Ho Chengguo. He originally rejected our offer from Liangzhou University and chose Qingzhou University instead. He must prove to others that his choice of not choosing Liangzhou University was correct, and the way to prove it is to come and defeat us personally." "That's also true," Li Zimu nodded thoughtfully. "Considering you snubbed him today, he would surely want to seek revenge." "Xiang Beifei, do you have the ability to defeat Ho Chengguo?" Shi Qiao asked. Xiang Beifei was silent for a moment, then nodded slightly. The expressions of Long Guocheng and the others improved slightly. They now all acknowledged Xiang Beifei and were aware of his prowess. Although this guy isn't an SSR, his strength is outrageously strong. With him around, even if Liangzhou University isn't as overtly powerful as those other 3 universities, it is still enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with the other schools. But if the other schools all send their SSRs against us, we are almost certainly defeated. Xiang Beifei can only compete twice, which means at most he can earn 2 points. "No problem." Elder Luo turned his head to look at Professor Guo and the other 2. He then set his gaze on Xiang Beifei and inquired, "I'm okay. I just figured you would probably be here by now." Xiang Beifei lightly tossed the large melon seed in his hand. That was something Elder Luo had given Xiang Beifei during the winter break for self-defense. He had counted 50,000 stars to get the system reward and had immediately given it to Xiang Beifei. It was like a system credit card. Xiang Beifei could directly use this melon seed to borrow in advance Elder Luo's leisure value. With Elder Luo's leisure value, Xiang Beifei could unleash powerful strength to protect himself. But Xiang Beifei had never used it, because it was linked to Elder Luo's combat strength, and he wouldn't misuse it carelessly. It wasn't until today when they were about to interrogate Professor Guo that Xiang Beifei borrowed 7979 leisure value. When he wiped away the massive amount of leisure value, Elder Luo immediately sensed it. He knew very well that Xiang Beifei wouldn't use it unless it was dangerous. Elder Luo carefully pondered the number and realized that 7,979 meant, "Help! Help!" So he hurried back to confirm the situation. Upon arriving, he found Zhu Yiji daring to lay hands on his people. Elder Luo immediately couldn't suppress his anger and took action. He was never someone easy to provoke. "Is Guo injured?" Elder Luo looked again at the slightly disordered aura around Professor Guo. "It's nothing serious." Professor Guo shook his head slightly. "And you?" "We're okay. Professor Guo was protecting us," Yi Changfeng said. "That's good. You all rest." Elder Luo rubbed his fist. "I'll vent your anger for you." A hint of murderous intent flashed in his eyes. By this time, Zhu Yiji, who had just been blasted underground by a word from Elder Luo, had already stepped out from deep beneath the ground and reappeared in the air, looking at this side in a mix of shock and anger. "Luo Yunxian, you're too much." Zhu Yiji was obviously putting on a bold front, but even he was shocked by Luo Yunxian's malicious force. 5 years ago, he knew Luo Yunxian was strong, but also not that much different from himself. In 5 years, Zhu Yiji's strength had greatly advanced. Completing missions with a UR grade system was very simple. Over the past 5 years, the strength of UR grade Zhuyi had improved a lot. He thought he could trample Luo Yunxian under his feet, which is why he dared to take action recently. But unexpectedly, after 5 years of not seeing him, today Luo Yunxian blew him away to the ground with just a loud shout. This made Zhu Yiji furious with embarrassment. Too much? Don't be in such a hurry. This is just the beginning. Elder Luo narrowed his eyes. The old eyes suddenly became clear as water, as if they contained a vast starry sky, profound and vast. Powerful spiritual power fluctuations swept out, instantly sealing off the surrounding space. The entire meeting room shifted once more, and it was as if they had arrived in a land of molten lava. Spiritual illusion. When this fluctuation swept out, even Xiang Beifei was secretly astonished, because this was not a system ability, but something Elder Luo created with spiritual power, a type of spiritual power. Such a level of illusion was so real it surpassed the spaces created by Zhu Yiji and Heat Sideways systems. When Elder Luo's spiritual power spread, Xiang Beifei found that he could no longer see Elder Luo's system information. The White Crane was truly a master of heavenly connection. At this moment, when Zhu Yiji saw the surroundings change, his expression darkened, and he immediately shouted, "Luo Yunxian, do you really want to fight me here? It's not about you taking action." Elder Luo lifted his eyelids. Without any noticeable movement, the ground's magma suddenly began to boil violently. Zhu Yiji felt something was not quite right. He immediately turned to look back, but just as he turned his head, a fiery fist slammed into his nose. Bang! Zhu Yiji had no time to react, and his entire form was smashed away, falling towards the magma below. But just as he fell not 10 meters, another fist appeared below, striking Zhu Yiji's face and blasting him to the left. However, before Zhu Yiji could recover from being hit to the left, another punch struck his forehead on the left, smashing him to the right. But there was already another fist waiting for him on the right. Bang! 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 Zhu Yiji was bombarded from all directions with countless fists appearing as if out of thin air, always managing to hit Zhu Yiji just before he could react, battering him around in the air like a ragged punching bag. It's me taking unilateral action. Elder Luo didn't move at all. He just stood there, watching Zhu Yiji with a menacing aura, as if he were just a spectator watching a play, the sudden appearance of those fists seemingly having nothing to do with him. That was the powerful force he had condensed with spiritual power, no different from actual attacks. Zhu Yiji was battered and bruised from being hit by fists from all sides. His head was spinning, and he couldn't even fight back. How can he be so strong? Zhu Yiji himself was stunned. In front of Luo Yunxian, why was he like a child who hadn't learned to walk yet, without any chance to fight back? He was a heavenly connection realm martial artist of the UR grade, right? To be so powerless before Luo Yunxian? What kind of monster is this man? But his whole body was battered so badly that he could only use various powerful system rules to protect various parts of his body. In the blink of an eye, Zhu Yiji's body was covered with various patterns of black and white squares and circles. You have currently set the square and round rules for your face. Current rule. Your nose will ignore any physical attacks. Crack. Zhu Yiji's nose was directly smashed to one side. You have currently set the square and round rules for your ribs. Current rule. Your ribs can ignore any spiritual attacks. Crack. There was a sound of Zhu Yiji's ribs fracturing. Woof! Even Xiaohei was so surprised that he kept wagging his tail. Zhu Yiji's system information was invisible, so Xiaohei couldn't fully control his system abilities or restrict Zhu Yiji from using the square and round rules. To crack the square and round rules, Xiaohei had to break them with his own paws. But Zhu Yiji moved too quickly, and the fluctuations erupting from his body were extremely terrifying. Xiaohei couldn't get close, so the square and round rules currently on Zhu Yiji were not broken by Xiaohei's help. It was Elder Luo who smashed Zhu Yiji's various square and round rules with his terrifying strength. Zhu Yiji's square and round rules might be invincible against others, but in front of Elder Luo, They were being one-sidedly crushed. This was an absolute suppression of horrifying strength. I can't beat him at all. Zhuyi was beaten to a complete mess, and he didn't know how many bones he had broken, but at least he was doing better than He Kaiwei, because he could still barely fend off with system items, whereas He Kaiwei couldn't. But now Zhuyi also started to retreat. This wasn't a battle of the same level at all. Luo Yunxian was still too terrifying. The host currently cannot withstand Luo Yunxian's attack. Do you want to use Blood Art Surge? Blood Art Surge. It could forcefully elevate one's cultivation level by a small realm. This was Zhuyi's strongest trump card. However, he wouldn't use it unless it was absolutely necessary. Because the cost of the Blood Art Surge was too great, not only did it require 50 million square and round value, after the cultivation level soared, it would also enter a period of decline, and he would fall one small realm in at least 3 months. If it were normal times, falling one realm in 3 months might be acceptable, but now that he had provoked Luo Yunxian, if Luo Yunxian came looking for trouble in the next 3 months, he would be finished. There were no other better options at the moment, because if he didn't use the Blood Art Surge, he wouldn't be able to break free from Luo Yunxian's spiritual illusion, and he would probably be bombarded to death by an enraged Luo Yunxian. Luo Yunxian looked like he had no intention of stopping. Zhuyi chose. Yes, with hatred. Buzz. A white light quickly spread over his body. As Elder Luo's fist came down again, he gritted his teeth, and blood burst forth from every pore on his body, forming a blood light that enveloped him, and a terrifying aura surged forth. Boom! Zhuyi forcibly blocked the punch. His cultivation level surged by a realm. Luo Yunxian, I will make you pay, Zhuyi said with bloodshot eyes. Is this your blood burst skill? However, Elder Luo just sneered with disdain, then stretched lazily and his figure disappeared into thin air. This time he moved. Even though Elder Luo didn't move when bombarding Zhuyi so many times just now, this time Zhuyi had qualified to make him take action personally. Zhuyi, having used Blood Art Surge, was mentally invigorated and shouted, "To force me to use my ultimate move, Luo Yunxian, you are indeed impressive. But if you think I still can't beat you..." Bang! Before Zhuyi could finish speaking, he saw a foot descend from the sky, kicking him directly onto the ground. Indeed, you still can't beat me, Elder Luo said slowly, and his figure disappeared again. Boom! 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 Zhuyi, engulfed in a mist of blood, seemed to be kicked from all directions by numerous Elder Luo figures, his whole body getting battered without a single part left unharmed. Zhuyi was full of grief and indignation. He had used the Blood Art Surge to increase his cultivation level, but he still couldn't win. Why was this old man so terrifying? At that moment, Zhuyi realized his aura was weakening. The Blood Art Surge had been significantly shortened due to Luo Yunxian's relentless bombardment, and it looked like it was about to fade. Not good. Zhuyi knew he couldn't delay any longer. If the effect of the Blood Art Surge wore off, he would be truly finished. Luo Yunxian, I swear, I will never let you go. Zhuyi had expended all his strength. His body instantly burst into a cloud of blood mist, and when the blood mist dissipated, Zhuyi's figure had vanished. Elder Luo slightly frowned. All you know is to escape using your blood art. He did not pursue, nor did he bother to. Although Zhuyi's cultivation was not as high as his, he was still of the heavenly connection realm, and had means to protect himself. The level of his blood art was so advanced in evading that even he could not catch up. Woof! However, Xiaohei suddenly barked, tugging on Xiang Beifei's ear with surprise. Xiang Beifei was also very surprised, because right when the blood mist scattered, he saw a system interface. Host, Zhuyi, UR level, square and round rule system. Realm, late orifice transforming. He could see Zhuyi's system interface? Xiang Beifei and Xiaohei looked at each other in astonishment. Didn't that mean he could receive the delivery? Woof, woof, woof. Xiaohei excitedly bounced around. Buzz. The spiritual power dissipated, and the surrounding magma also vanished without a trace. And once again, they were back in the conference room. Do you feel vindicated now? If not, I can go beat him up again next time. Beat him until you're satisfied. After all, he's in the Su Alliance. He can't run far. Elder Luo inquired, looking at Professor Gua, Xiang Beifei, and Yi Changfeng. Standing up for his own people, there was nothing he was afraid to do. Professor Gua did not speak. He had grown accustomed to Luo's temper. If he said anything, Luo might really charge off to the alliance. Yi Changfeng was resigned as he adjusted his glasses. The protective great white crane was still as impetuous as ever. He too did not speak for the moment. For now, it's okay. Xiang Beifei and Xiaohe were planning Zhu Yiji's delivery. Run if you must, but you can't outrun the system nor Xiaohe. Then, he curiously looked at Elder Luo's system interface. Realm. Early Meridian Opening. This terrifying old man's realm had changed to the Meridian Opening phase again. Seeing the three of them saying nothing, Elder Luo rubbed his fists, then glanced at He Kaiwei lying on the ground in misery, and asked, "What's the deal with this guy?" He Kaiwei, taking advantage of Elder Luo's absence, conspired with Wu Shixian to frame Professor Gua. He even tried to kill us just now, Xiang Beifei said. Whoosh! Luo's gaze turned sharp like a blade, directly cutting towards He Kaiwei, who was vomiting blood on the spot. He Kaiwei, realizing he had caught Luo's attention, gasped and swallowed the blood he had just coughed up into his mouth. He had always wanted to get rid of this person before him, to become the genuine commander and to complete the system's tasks. So he had constantly been using various schemes, colluding with Zhu Yiji to trip up Luo Yunxian. Simply because he knew that Zhu Yiji's cultivation was almost on par with Luo Yunxian's. There was a chance to eliminate Luo Yunxian. However, what he never expected was that he would not only be blasted into an unrecognizable state by Professor Gua, but even Zhu Yiji, who he believed could go toe-to-toe with Luo Yunxian, was also beaten into a sorry state by Luo Yunxian. From the moment Zhu Yiji was blasted into the ground, He Kaiwei had been utterly shocked by Luo Yunxian. With Zhu Yiji present, he had the confidence to confront Luo Yunxian. But without Zhu Yiji, where would he get the capital to oppose Luo Yunxian? You dare to frame Gua? And you think about killing my people? Luo stared at He Kaiwei, a murderous intent flaring in his eyes again. He Kaiwei was seething inside. He himself was the one who had almost been killed. Luo Yunxian. Before the matter is investigated. He Kaiwei attempted to defend himself with a fierce but fearful tone. However, Luo did not give He Kaiwei a chance to explain, already slapping him across the face. Slap. Luo Yunxian did not hold back with his slap, making He Kaiwei's face swell immediately. What do you count for? Touching my people. Luo barked coldly. Zhu Yiji was of heavenly connection realm, and he had let him escape. Next, it would be He Kaiwei's turn. Xiang Beifei looked thoughtfully at the people from Yenzhou University, his gaze sweeping over them before resting on Zhu Xinjue. After a moment, he said, "How did you end up here?" After we entered this withered forest, we realized something was off and then ran up this mountain. The situation outside is very bad. Did you just encounter those strange tree people too? Yu Hongba asked. That's right, Xiang Beifei said indifferently. Are you all right? Yu Hongba asked. Not too bad. Xiang Beifei glanced at Tang He behind him. Tang He was from Qingzhou University, and their team was in quite a bad situation. When Tang He saw Yu Hongba and the others, he also showed a shocked expression. He hadn't expected to encounter people from Yenzhou University, especially since Ho Qinggu of their Qingzhou University had died at the hands of Zhu Pengfei. However, he didn't dare to say much now. He was only a late-stage Qi-controlling SR-level awakener, and without any teammates around, he was no match for these people from Yenzhou University. How long have you been in this withered forest? Xiang Beifei asked. We came in last night, Yu Hongba said. Last night? You've been here for almost a day now. Xiang Beifei was somewhat surprised. Yes, we came here last night. Yu Hongba no longer harbored thoughts of dealing with Xiang Beifei, but rather he felt a hint of wanting to join forces with Xiang Beifei, since his team was also in a very awkward position. This place was really strange. They were trapped and couldn't find a way out. Seeing Xiang Beifei, Yu Hongbo felt a surge of hope. Xiang Beifei was strong. Perhaps he had a way. So, you're all right? Xiang Beifei asked. One of us had an accident, Yu Hongbo said solemnly. Now only 4 of them remained in their team. Have you been on this mountain since last night? Xiang Beifei asked. Not exactly. At first we were walking in the withered forest, but then suddenly it got darker and things seemed wrong, so we ran up the mountain. We found that those tree people didn't dare to come up, and we breathed a sigh of relief. We weren't on this mountain at first, but on another mountain. So you are the N-level awakener, Xiang Beifei? Chun Baiwen didn't look good facing Xiang Beifei. He actually didn't want to come forward, because the previous Ho Chenggu lost inexplicably, and he hadn't seen clearly how Ho Chenggu lost. If he lost to an N-level student, his reputation would be almost destroyed. However, if he didn't come forward to challenge Xiang Beifei, he would be even more ridiculed as a coward, indirectly proving that he, a prestigious SSR awakener, was afraid of an N-level. That would mean Xiang Beifei won without fighting. After all, like Ho Chenggu, he had dismissed the idea of attending Liangzhou University, which recruited N-level students, persuaded by other universities not to go to Liangzhou University. Since Chun Baiwen had decided to give up on Liangzhou University initially, it showed he was an arrogant SSR himself. How could he not prove himself? Xiang Beifei just calmly looked at Zhu Xinjue, but a murderous intent appeared in his eyes. Last time he hadn't killed this fellow who was obviously planning to kill him, so this time he must kill Zhu Xinjue. However, just as he finished speaking, he felt his knees bend, and with a snap, he suddenly knelt in front of Xiang Beifei. Zhu Xinjue and the others were also startled. Ho Chenggu, what are you doing? Chun Baiwen asked in surprise. Ho Chenggu was also shocked by his own actions. Why did he kneel down? Wasn't it agreed to let Xiang Beifei off track? Why was it him who knelt instead? Ho Chenggu's face turned red with anger as he tried to stand up, but no matter what, he couldn't. But just then, Ho Chenggu, with sharp eyes, suddenly saw Xiang Beifei's figure and immediately shouted, "There he is!" This time everyone saw clearly. Xiang Beifei was a real person. The others also saw Xiang Beifei, but due to the flood, it was difficult for them to split off. Yu Hongbo, you keep an eye on these SRs. We few will deal with him, Ho Chenggu shouted. All right. Yu Hongbo had to take care of his subordinates. Otherwise the SRs would be directly overwhelmed by the flood. Zhu Xinjue's eyes revealed a trace of ruthlessness, and a huge glass ball appeared in his hand. The glass ball flickered, turned into a phantom light, and enveloped the void. This time I'll see where you can go, Zhu Xinjue sneered. The glass ball was a UR-level space system item, capable of making any space-transferring item ineffective. Since everyone had a forfeit talisman, Zhu Xinjue was worried that Xiang Beifei might escape. Soon, Ho Chenggu, Zhu Xinjue, Chun Baiwen, and He Chodong encircled Xiang Beifei, their powerful auras no weaker than the flood, staring intently at Xiang Beifei. Xiang Beifei, although I know you're strong, now that we're 4, I still advise you to forfeit, He Chodong said. He Chodong was not aware of Zhu Xinjue's plan. Like Chun Baiwen, her only goal was to make Xiang Beifei drop out. Xiang Beifei looked indifferently at the 4 people before him. 4 people easier to deal with than 5. Correct. We don't want to harm you. Just drop out on your own to avoid trouble, Chun Baiwen said gravely. However, Ho Chenggu and Zhu Xinjue were filled with endless murderous intent. What are we waiting for? If we want him out of the game, we must take him down first, Ho Chenggu shouted. This time facing Xiang Beifei, he already had enough confidence. Although he didn't know how he had lost during the last match on the platform, now with 4 against 1, he considered Xiang Beifei as good as dead in his eyes. Ho Chenggu gritted his teeth and said, "Today, I will make you pay the price." That day, as an SSR himself, he was thrown into a trash bin, completely disgraced. Today he must kill Xiang Beifei. 3 against 2, not too bad, not too terrible, Xiang Beifei said. 3 against 2? Zhu Xinjue scoffed. Are you scared stupid by us? Can't even count the numbers now? It's 4 of us against you alone. President Ren is so esteemed and respected. He himself said that names don't matter, strength does. A senior who can say such words must have a broad mind. How would he care about trifles like names with me? As a proud student of President Ren, why is your philosophy not aligned with his? Xiang Beifei looked at Ho Qinggu puzzledly and then said, Haven't you learned even the slightest from him? His words were seamless. First, he sarcastically remarked on Ren Zhonghai, then immediately elevated Ren Zhonghai to a high pedestal, making it impossible for Ren Zhonghai to lash out over Xiang Beifei's jest about names, and simultaneously subtly insulted Ho Qinggu without leaving a trace. You! Ho Qinggu was so infuriated by Xiang Beifei that his face turned red. In midair, Li Zimu stood there, looking down in surprise and said, They actually can't tell. The flood here was a transformation of Li Zimu's poetry realm. Li Zimu's poetry realm had reached a stage where true and false were indistinguishable. However, Ho Qinggu and Chen Baiwen, being SSRs a level higher and more cultivated than him, should not be in such a sorry state. Of course they can't tell. Not one of them is a spiritual type system awakener, Xiang Beifei said. Xiang Beifei's spiritual power was adhered to the poetry realm created by Li Zimu. So even though Li Zimu was only at the later stages of chi controlling, the flood he created had the power of meridian opening phase. As for the suppression due to system levels with Xiang Beifei there, the so-called superiority of the SSR system was just a decoration. He specifically sought Li Zimu's help to trap this group. But after walking a distance, a fork suddenly appeared ahead. Xiang Beifei's shadow reappeared at the fork, but then disappeared again on this path. Which way should we go? Ho Qinggu asked Chen Baiwen anxiously. Don't know, no traces. Chen Baiwen shook his head. Forget it, let's split into 2 groups. It'll be faster. Zhu Xinjue said. Splitting into 2 groups means dispersing our power. If we encounter Xiang Beifei, do you really think you stand a chance against him? Chen Baiwen asked. Xiang Beifei is obviously being chased by that desolate beast. How could we not have a chance if we encounter him? Zhu Xinjue said. After a brief discussion, they decided to split up but agreed that if they encountered Xiang Beifei, they would first signal the others. If they couldn't find anyone after half an hour, they would regroup here. To ensure mutual trust, they mixed up the members from both sides. Zhu Xinjue and Yu Hongba He Qiutong took one route, while Chen Baiwen and Ho Qinggu took another. Ho Qinggu and Chen Baiwen, accompanied by 3 SRs, took the left path. Chen Baiwen appeared deeply preoccupied, but Ho Qinggu still warned, Don't forget our agreement. Xiang Beifei vaguely understood and said, Digesting memory? Desolate beasts eating other desolate beasts' brains could sometimes digest the memories of those beasts, meaning all that the eaten beast had seen and heard could be absorbed by another. If the green caterpillar was squished by Long Guocheng, it means the caterpillar had seen Xiang Beifei and his people. Even though the caterpillar didn't understand human language, images would still remain in its mind. So what exactly did they say when they encountered the green caterpillar? Had it remembered anything? Eating the brains of other desolate beasts to make up for one's own deficiencies and expand one's knowledge. The more they consume, the higher the intelligence these desolate beasts inevitably possess. Powerful but simple-minded desolate beasts are not frightening. The ones with high intelligence are the most terrifying. Right now, we just don't know what impression the green caterpillar, which was stomped to death by Long Guocheng, left about them. Li Zimu's stone house was stacked with many rooms. Everyone was separated by one room. There were no beds, no quilts. Although it was crude, things weren't so particular in the desolate wilderness outside the domain. When Xiang Beifei returned from his shift, Long Guocheng was leaning against the door with his hands crossed in front of him and asked, Can I ask you a question? What? Xiang Beifei said. You're not a N-level awakener, are you? You're at least an SR, right? Is that important to you? It would make me feel better, Long Guocheng said reluctantly. If he lost to an SR like Li Zimu, he wouldn't feel too embarrassed because the opponent's talents were no less than his. Both being SR, losing once could be won back the next time. But losing to an N-level awakener left a knot in his heart. That's your own problem, It has nothing to do with me? Xiang Beifei didn't like explaining his system to others, because he didn't have a system at all. We are a team. I've told you all about my abilities, but we all don't know yours. As a team, we should understand each other better. Long Guoqing stressed. Now you admit you're part of a team? I thought you always liked to show off, Xiang Beifei said. Long Guoqing snorted, offering no retort to that. He did indeed like to show off, as he couldn't earn system points otherwise. If you tell me you are SR or SSR, then I would accept my loss wholeheartedly, Long Guoqing said. So you just look down on people with a lower system rank than yours? What's wrong with being N level? What about R level? How about S level? Aside from cultivation improvements, how are they inferior to you in character, morals, personality, that you need to despise them? Do you really enjoy feeling superior to those lower in the system? Xiang Beifei said sternly. Long Guoqing was at a loss for words. He looked down on people with lesser talents than his, because he believed that these people would never amount to anything, especially the bottom-tier N-level awakeners. He only respected the strong. But his pride was always shattered by Xiang Beifei. He hoped that Xiang Beifei's system rank was SR or even SSR, which he could accept so that the defeat by Xiang Beifei wouldn't be too demoralizing, and he could maintain his deeply held prideful principles. But what he couldn't accept was the fact that Xiang Beifei was an N-level. I just don't believe that N-level awakeners have such potential. Their system is so useless. They achieve so little in a lifetime, they couldn't possibly have such strength. Long Guoqing clenched his teeth. Why can't N-level awakeners defeat an SR? Shang Tianxiong is also an N-level awakener. How many people can exceed him? People with strength can kill an SSR even if they're SR. We all live in this world. We are all human. You're not nobler than anyone. You just started higher than others. It doesn't mean your future is higher. You should stay humble, Xiang Beifei stated. After saying this, Xiang Beifei went straight back to his own compartment. Humble, huh? Long Guoqing's expression flickered, pondering Xiang Beifei's words. Late in the evening, around 9 o'clock, Yi Changfeng gathered everyone together, holding a copy of the competition schedule and rules for the next day. Elder Luo said, "We need to discuss tomorrow's situation first. What use is your acknowledgement of wrongdoing to me?" Elder Luo coldly watched Wu Shixian, who was kneeling on the ground and slapping his own face. Understanding dawned on Wu Shixian as he moved on his knees in front of Professor Guo, ceaselessly kowtowing. "Professor Guo, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I was heartless and deserved to die. I shouldn't have listened to slander and framed you. You're a noble person. Please forgive me." Professor Guo stood there, watching Wu Shixian. Watching this student he had always cultivated wholeheartedly, feeling unavoidably melancholic. He had just realized something he'd always neglected. Morality before skill. A person without morals, even if you teach him all the skills, how can you expect him to protect his home and country? How can you expect him to withstand the tide of beasts? Professor Guo looked at Xiang Beifei and Yi Changfeng. They were Zhuzhou's future. How come every disciple Elder Luo took on was so outstanding and righteous? He watched Wu Shixian, who was kowtowing and begging for mercy. He didn't speak, and he didn't stop him from continuing to kowtow, as if he no longer cared about it all. Silently, he turned around and headed towards the doorway. Professor Guo, please spare me. Just say a word, Professor Guo." Wu Shixian shouted in fear behind him, hoping to receive a word of forgiveness from Professor Guo. He understood Professor Guo too well, knowing that if he kept pleading, Professor Guo would inevitably soften his heart and forgive him. Just like when he was still a student, no matter how unruly or arrogant he was, Professor Guo would only severely criticize him, then help him solve his problems. He thought that Professor Guo would do the same today. If he pretended to be miserable, Professor Guo would definitely soften his heart, and he could be forgiven, just like always, by exploiting Professor Guo's nature. Professor Guo reached the doorway, seeming to hesitate. Wu Shixian was overjoyed, thinking that Professor Guo really wanted to plead for him. However, Professor Guo gritted his teeth and stepped forward, disappearing into the void. Wu Shixian felt his heart turn cold. He didn't say he'd spare you, Elder Luo said with a chilling air.
No.
That's not. Professor Guo will forgive me, listen to me. Wu Shixian was still trying for a last-ditch effort. Smack! Elder Luo showed no mercy, striking Wu Shixian so hard that he spun 720 degrees in the air and smashed onto the ground. Protect me! Wu Shixian, seeing stars from the blow, also yelled loudly in his mind towards the system. Current character: Luo Yunxian, surname Luo, with extremely high cultivation level. Would you like to spend 10 million system points to exchange for camel grass, negating 10% of the power? Yes. Yes. Wu Shixian nodded desperately. Camel grass exchanged and directly applied to the host. Smack. Ah. Woof. Woof. After more than a dozen resounding slaps, Wu Shixian had been beaten to a point where he was unrecognizable, lying breathlessly on the ground, even worse off than He Kai Wei. You dare to frame someone like Guo, who has done so much for the borders. What have you contributed to the borders? How dare you commit such atrocities? Do you really think you're untouchable as an SSR? That no one can kill you? Murderous intent had begun to flare in Elder Luo's eyes. An SSR like this, keeping him would only cause trouble. Better to kill him. But just then, an extremely powerful fluctuation swept over the place, followed by an ethereal voice. Luo, show some mercy. It was a pleasant and melodious voice, like it came from an empty valley, reminiscent of flowing spring water, tinkling gently. It was a woman. Upon hearing this voice, Elder Luo's eyebrows twitched slightly. You also want a medal in these muddy waters? Elder Luo clearly recognized this hidden woman and was somewhat scornful. It's beyond my control. You've already punished the two of them and they've paid the price. If you still feel unsatisfied, you can continue beating them. But please spare their lives. The ethereal voice resonated. Chao Pei and the others exchanged glances because they had no idea who this woman speaking was. They were unaware that someone like her was hidden within the alliance. Her cultivation was clearly much stronger than Zhu Yiji's. Elder Luo glanced at Wu Shixian, with the murderous intent in his eyes undiminished. What if I say no? He wanted to kill, and this woman was unlikely to stop him. The woman let out a faint sigh. Luo, do you remember you once said you owed me a favor? Elder Luo frowned slightly. Favors are not repaid like this. You said you would definitely help me with a favor, the woman said. Elder Luo responded coldly. This isn't just my affair, but my student's affair as well, and it's also about Guo's reputation. Where were you when Guo was being slandered just now? Where were you when He Kai Wei and Zhu Yiji were giving them trouble? You have the cheek to talk about favors when I'm about to fight for justice for them? If I hadn't returned, do you have any idea what the consequences would have been for my student and Guo? He was not buying it. The woman said softly, I was unaware this had happened here. If I had been, I definitely would have stopped it. You should know, I'm not asking you for mercy on their behalf. I just don't want. She paused, her voice growing complicated. I just don't want another 5-year incident. At this point, Sun Heshuan also felt compelled to step in and mediate. Elder Luo, wait. Beating is one thing, but killing needs careful consideration. He dared to move against Guo and even dared to kill my disciple. Do I still need to think twice? Elder Luo said coldly. You can't do it like the last time again. You know I've always been on your side. Sun Heshuan said urgently. Xiang Beifei looked at Sun Heshuan, his thoughts also dwelling on the woman's words. After a long moment he finally spoke. Elder Luo, there's no need to kill. 5 years ago, in front of everyone, Elder Luo executed an SSR, tarnishing his own reputation significantly. If he were to kill another SSR in front of so many people again, he would likely stir up a lot more trouble. So Elder Luo must not take action. He would do the killing. You're not going to pursue him? Elder Luo asked, frowning. We can't make things difficult for Minister Sun. He helped us a lot today. Xiang Beifei nodded gratefully at Sun Heshuan. Sun Hushuan was a good man, always willing to lend a helping hand. Sun Hushuan also nodded slightly at Xiang Beifei, seeming to relax. Xiang Beifei wasn't as uncompromising in his actions as Elder Luo, which pleased him. Xiang Beifei raised his head and swept his gaze across Chao Pei and the others, especially He Kaiwei, who was on his last breath, the corners of his mouth revealing a hint of mockery. I believe the fair and incorruptible Zhuzhou Alliance has its own laws to punish these two, right? His words were directed towards the woman who didn't wish even to show her face. Just now, Wu Shishuan's guilt was nearly confirmed. Yet Chao Pei still thought of playing down the issue. The Alliance's so-called fairness was a joke. Only those who knew which side to stand on had a say in the Alliance. Yes, I'll give you an explanation, I promise, the woman responded. Elder Luo pondered for a moment and then asked, "What about Chong Feng?" Yi Chongfeng looked at Wu Shixian, who was kneeling on the ground with disgust, but still shook his head. "You're lucky." Elder Luo then kicked Wu Shixian aside. "Thank you." A gust of wind passed, and He Kaiwei and Wu Shixian had both disappeared from the conference room. "If the Alliance doesn't give an explanation, I will go and demand one from the Alliance," Elder Luo called out from behind. "Certainly," the woman's voice echoed. Elder Luo once more cast a cold glance at Chao Pei, who was trembling with fear, before turning and leaving the conference room. Xiang Beifei glanced at Yang Chengze huddling in the corner without speaking and left with Yi Chongfeng, following Elder Luo. "Principal Chao, we take our leave." Sun Hushuan took the three terrified witnesses who had been cowering in the corner and also left. Chao Pei stood in place, panting heavily. It was only after a long time that he turned to everyone behind him and said, "Regarding today's matters, no one is to disclose any information until the investigation is clear. Professor Liu, keep today's events a secret. With such a commotion, find an excuse to manage the student side of things too. If this matter weren't handled well, his reputation as principal would be greatly affected." However, what Chao Pei did not see was that, in a corner of the conference room, Xiaohe was prying a camera off the wall and pocketing it. The entire process had been recorded by Xiang Beifei. The bleak border, shrouded in gray fog sweeping over the vast, desolate wilderness beyond sight, where countless desolate beasts lurked. Professor Gua sat on top of the city wall, silently watching the gray fog, his expression somber. He was deep in thought, silent. Eventually, he turned his attention to the desolate beasts roaring below the city wall, then waved his hand, killing all the gathering desolate beasts and took their beast pills. He placed the beast pills into the city wall, integrating them into the formation to strengthen the defense. "I thought you would rest for a couple of days." The voice of Elder Luo sounded beside Professor Gua. "We still need to clear out the small-scale beast waves," Professor Gua replied without turning around, continuing to embed the beast pills into the bricks of the wall. Elder Luo slowly walked up to the edge of the wall, laying a hand on the sturdy structure and then, bending his finger, knocked on the wall with his knuckles. The black bricks emitted a thudding sound. "The defense is very strong," he said. "The border is long. Even the strongest defenses will be worn down by the power of the desolate beasts," Professor Gua said. Elder Luo nodded slightly, just watching Professor Gua work with the beast pills. He knew Gua's character well and understood what the defense of the border meant to him. Elder Luo was a few years older than Professor Gua. Back when a beast wave broke through Zhuzhou's defenses and took Professor Gua's family, Professor Gua had not yet awakened his system. It was Elder Luo who rescued him. Since then, Professor Gua, having lost his family, made a determined vow to become a guardian, to protect the defenses of Zhuzhou, to safeguard its civilians, and to prevent such tragedies from befalling others. This was a lifetime's commitment. He never slackened his efforts. Even though he had just experienced unfounded allegations, it changed nothing for Professor Gua. After a while, Elder Luo finally said, "What do you think is the most likely scenario in which the city wall's defenses could be breached?" Professor Gua was silent for a moment and then answered, "If there is a large-scale systematic attack by a beast wave with creatures of God refining strength or higher, and if it goes unopposed, then the city wall's defenses will be broken. You're wrong, Elder Luo said, rejecting Professor Gui's statement. You've been doing this all your life, and still, you don't understand? What's the greatest threat to the border defenses? He can be with even better people in the future. Your son is definitely going to be successful. Congratulations, congratulations. I need to go check on the other students' results, so I won't disturb the celebration between you and your son. Yang Hua waved his hand, too lazy to pay any more attention to Xiang Qingde and Xiang Beifei, outright ignoring them. Don't take what that guy said to heart. You can definitely do it. Kong Xiuwen came over to cheer Xiang Beifei on. But Kong Xiuwen actually didn't feel confident either. It was not hard for him to aim for the elite universities, but for Xiang Beifei, the difficulty was significant. Up until now, he didn't know how much Xiang Beifei had improved. Xiang Beifei didn't go into any detailed explanation either, but Xiang Qingde felt increasingly uncomfortable after hearing Yang Hua's words. Xiang Beifei looked at Wang Dan, sinking into thought silently. The assessment system of the system world might be just, but it's not fair. The 9 elite universities don't treat N-level awakeners very kindly. Not only do N-levels not get extra points, but the thresholds for elite universities are high, and there is a special entrance examination. Aside from Liangzhou University, the other 8 elite universities even directly reject them. If it were an S or R level, a score of 601 would have been more than enough to get into the 9 elite universities. Even Kong Xiuwen with 513 could make it. But the system world is special with its own rules for survival. To live better in this world, system talent is too important. Higher-level talent awakeners complete system tasks swiftly, and that is an undeniable fact. It is normal for special schools to have special enrollment requirements that apply everywhere. For example, clinical medicine won't allow those with infectious diseases, and someone with a stutter isn't suitable for the teaching profession. The 9 elite universities need to train the top talents of the Juzhou Federation and reserve talent for the Federation, so it makes sense for their selection criteria to be high. After all, in this world, academic scores are just a reference, while what really matters is the system talent. Yang Hua was happily counting his teacher prestige value. Most of his class's results were also out. The highest scorer in his class wasn't the S-level Zhuo Jing, but Wang Dan, who had awakened the N-level flower cultivation system. She scored 601 points. Wang Dan seemed very excited. Her system was flower cultivation, so she planned to apply to agricultural and forestry universities. Good, not bad. Very good.
Yang Hua congratulated Wang Dan loudly.
He was beaming, treating Wang Dan very kindly, having gained another 601 points of teacher prestige value from her. However, many people remembered that 2 months after awakening her system, Wang Dan was neglected by Yang Hua, even moved to the back of the classroom, and when she asked questions during class, he appeared impatient. Just because Wang Dan was an N-level awakener. But Yang Hua didn't care about that. As long as someone could bring him benefits, that was a good thing for him, and he could generously offer praise with a complete change of attitude with no issues. I hope this child can achieve something in the future. Although only an N-level, his genes come from Xiang Tianxing. The prospect of getting into Liangzhou University this year looks slim, but let's see if there is hope next year or the year following. Li Nanxing wasn't counting on Xiang Beifei to bring him any prestige value. Frankly, in his view, hoping that Xiang Beifei would boost his prestige was even less likely than relying on those S-level students. But the reason he came to encourage Xiang Beifei was mostly because of Xiang Tianxing. That day, when Xiang Beifei came to his office to consult about system university selection, Li Nanxing seemed to see a shadow of Xiang Tianxing in Xiang Beifei. Just then, a voice came from the side. Professor Yang, how can you belittle a student like this? Li Nanxing walked over from the crowd, staring at Yang Hua with a serious expression. Principal. When Yang Hua saw Li Nanxing, his haughty expression faltered, and he quickly put on a smile to greet him. Li Nanxing was also there to see the students' results. Such an important event. Naturally, as the principal, he couldn't be absent, but he happened to overhear the conversation here and felt the need to intervene. As a teacher, you should teach without discrimination and explore the strengths of each student, not casually label a student. You belittle someone's child in front of their parents. Is that what a teacher should do?
Li Nanxing skulda.
Yang Hua didn't dare to respond, but inside, he still looked down on everything. How could a student like Xiang Beifei have any strengths? I only spoke the truth. There's no way he could get into university. Li Nanxing turned and apologized to Xiang Qingde with a remorseful expression. I'm sorry. Professor Yang was just agitated from waiting for the results. He spoke rashly. As the principal, I didn't manage my teacher properly, and for that I apologize. Please don't take it to heart. Not at all. Xiang Qingde was somewhat flattered, knowing that Principal Li Nanxing was at least a meridian opening stage individual, with high cultivation and status. It was rare for such a person to lower himself to apologize. Li Nanxing said, You are Xiang Beifei's grandfather, right? Don't worry, I have quite a high opinion of Xiang Beifei. I know he may not have performed well in the college entrance examination this year, but no matter if Xiang Beifei wishes to retake the year, I will arrange a class for him. Really? That's very kind of you, Principal, Xiang Qingde said gratefully. Li Nanxing reassured and then sternly said, Professor Yang, aren't you going to apologize right away? Yang Hua said reluctantly, I'm sorry, old Master Xiang. I was impulsive just now. However, in his heart, he snorted coldly. Forget about next year. Giving Xiang Beifei 10 years might still not give him a chance to get into university. You need to do well on the test tomorrow. Don't let yourself feel burdened. Just perform your best. Don't think too much, and make sure to check your paper after finishing. Xiang Qingde instructed Xiang Beifei incessantly. Does Grandpa seem nervous? Xiang Beifei said. Xiang Qingde replied, This is a major event in your life, of course. Grandpa is nervous. He knew Xiang Beifei's grades were poor, so poor they could be described as terrible, and having awakened an N-level system, his future seemed bleak. But ever since the awakening system appeared 2 months ago, Xiang Beifei had become a different person, incredibly diligent, reigniting a glimmer of hope in him. You little rascal, eat slower. Xiang Qingde saw Xiaohe almost burying himself in the bowl and rubbed Xiaohe's head. Others usually couldn't see Xiaohe, but since the temptation of delicious food made it want to move up to the dining table, Xiaohe chose to be visible to Xiang Qingde, to prevent the unnerving sight of meat disappearing into thin air. Xiang Beifei simply said it was a result of his system. Xiang Qingde didn't doubt it, agreeing to let it on the table, and even prepared a small bowl for it. Xiaohe smacked his lips and belched contentedly. The dinner was simple and joyful. Xiang Qingde still waited for Xiang Beifei to finish eating before he started. Xiang Beifei still only ate his half, leaving the other half for his grandfather. Life was impoverished but also warm. Xiang Beifei liked this kind of life. November 17, 2020. Xiang Beifei said, Using surveillance to search, you probably won't find him. How is that possible? These glasses are the high-tech creation of our Police Research and Development Center. Lu Jiwei whispered. The researchers behind these glasses are big shots in the tech industry. Even if he uses an invisibility system, his figure should be captured and prominently marked. The circulation of air makes invisibility abilities ineffective. Haven't you all considered why Lai Wuying has been rampant for so long? Yet you haven't captured even a hint of his appearance? Not even a silhouette? Other criminals at least have a known appearance. But he has never left any trace in the surveillance, has he? Xiang Beifei said. Lu Hong, who heard Xiang Beifei's words, spoke up. He has strong counter-surveillance skills, surely knows how to avoid monitoring, and probably possesses the ability to pass through walls. This is why we can't track his whereabouts and information. What if he's not deliberately avoiding it? Xiang Beifei said. Lu Hong furrowed his brows slightly, asking, What do you mean? You all should be clearer about the capabilities of systems than I am. If his system allows him to remain undetected by all electronic surveillance, it's possible. If he has the ability to block electronic monitoring, then even if he walks right past you while you're wearing those glasses, you might not see him, Xiang Beifei said. Lu Hong looked at Xiang Beifei surprisedly, originally thinking this young man was just a rookie who had just awakened his system and still hadn't figured out his own abilities. But he hadn't expected Xiang Beifei to consider this possibility. Continue, then. What do you think we should do to find him? Lu Hong asked quietly. It's simple. Xiang Beifei played with the glasses in his hand for a moment. Learn by analogy allowed him to quickly master all the functions of the glasses. He tapped on the glasses and then said, just let one lens of the glasses go out of order. Lu Hong and Lu Jiwei looked at each other dumbfounded. Why? Lu Jiwei didn't understand. If his system is to block electronic devices, then with the glasses on, we are blind even with our eyes open. So, if we use our naked eyes to make comparisons, we can figure it out, Xiang Beifei said. November 15, 2020. Xiang Beifei walked among the crowd. A figure followed closely behind him. It was a man wearing glasses, carrying a briefcase and dressed in a suit, looking just like a regular office worker. He maintained a distance of 50 meters from Xiang Beifei, not too close yet not too far. Woof woof. Xiaohei on Xiang Beifei's shoulder barked alertly. Is someone following us? Xiang Beifei frowned slightly. As he passed by a bus stop, he halted. The bus stop was crowded. Xiang Beifei stood next to a young man who owned an N-level insurance sales system, pretended to wait for the bus, and then glanced backward. But the suited man seemed not to look at Xiang Beifei at all. He walked past Xiang Beifei without even a glance in his direction. Xiang Beifei caught a glimpse of the other party's system interface. Host. Chun Gang. R-level. 8-faceted ingenious system. Realm. Late Qi mastery. What is the 8-faceted ingenious system? Xiang Beifei was curious. He was about to take a good look at the other party's system information when the man in the suit named Chun Gang had already turned a street corner and disappeared. Is he the one tracking me? Xiang Beifei inquired. Woof. Xiaohei nodded. As Xiang Beifei was pondering what to do, at that moment, a woman in high heels and white clothes approached from the corner. Ordinarily, Xiang Beifei wouldn't have paid any attention to the woman in white. It was the end of the workday, and the streets were filled with men and women, young and old. Had he not happened to see the system interface of the woman in white? Host. Chun Gang. R-level. 8-faceted ingenious system. Realm. Late Qi mastery. The man in the suit earlier was called Chun Gang. How could this woman in high heels also be called Chun Gang? And their system information is exactly the same? Something doesn't seem right. The step Xiang Beifei had just lifted halted once again. Could the man in the suit and this woman in high heels be the same person? Xiang Beifei found this extremely novel, and this time he took a serious look at the other party's system interface. 8-faceted ingenious system. Skillful and adept in handling matters. The system's introduction was brief, just this one sentence. However, he saw more information on the 8-faceted ingenious system's interface. You used the ingenious mirror to reflect on passers-by for disguise. Disguise time is half an hour. Remaining disguises for today, 5. This is indeed fresh. Xiang Beifei vaguely understood that this 8-faceted ingenious system was a system for disguising, and looking at the other party's daily mission interface, one could disguise as a passerby up to 8 times per day. Then how does this system execute missions? Xiang Beifei was very curious about these matters. Surely getting stronger couldn't depend solely on disguises, right? But he quickly discovered that the other party grew stronger by interacting with people and learning their abilities to handle matters. At a certain level, this 8-faceted ingenious system could even learn some special abilities of the person being disguised. This kid has a really sharp sense of smell. I almost got caught. But thankfully, he probably thinks I went far away. He would never expect me to come back following him in the guise of a woman. Chun Gang, wearing high heels, walked coldly past Xiang Beifei, stretched her neck pretending to look into the distance, waiting for the bus. Xiang Beifei was still leaning on the bus stop, staring at the signboard, deep in thought, as if looking for a stop. Chun Gang's gaze inadvertently fell on Xiang Beifei, then her eyebrows slightly furrowed. That being said, why did the boss ask me to investigate this kid's talent? He doesn't look anything like a UR-level hidden genius. Chun Gang was very puzzled. In her mind, if there was a UR-level awakener, the Jojo Alliance would have officially sent someone to protect him early on. not let such a rare gem wander around? Regardless, she needed to find a way to test this kid named Xiang Beifei. Chen Gang squeezed her way toward Xiang Beifei, also staring at the bus stop, and then said, "Excuse me, handsome guy, could you tell me how to get to Chenda Plaza by bus?" Xiang Beifei said, "Take the number 16 bus." "Oh, the number 16 bus."
Chen Gong suddenly realized.
You conversed with Xiang Beifei, you learned Xiang Beifei's accent, your accent material library +1. Xiang Beifei was not at all surprised. Unrestrained might be behind them. I have always been looking, but unfortunately, they act very covertly. I caught a few members of Unrestrained, but couldn't get anything out of them, Elder Luo said. Are they still alive? Xiang Beifei asked. Elder Luo shook his head. Their secrecy measures are very well implemented. They use their lives to keep secrets. Xiang Beifei was not surprised either. Eternal Sleep and Keishi also mentioned this point. Both Unrestrained and the Su people have their own ways of keeping secrets. Let me try next time, Xiang Beifei said. You think you can interrogate them? Perhaps. Xiang Beifei didn't need to interrogate them. All he had to do was take a look at their system logs. Wufu Desolate Beast Research Company looks like a very normal company, paying taxes to the Alliance on time, conducting various public welfare activities, honest and upright businessmen. But I can't find their core research base. I suspect this company has set up its core research base in the extraterritorial wilderness, and only certain special people can go there. Extraterritorial wilderness? Xiang Beifei was surprised. No wonder then. No wonder what? Elder Luo asked. No wonder Xiao Shang couldn't find anything either. Xiang Beifei told Elder Luo about Xiao Shang's situation. He is indeed quite dependable, Elder Luo nodded slightly. Did Elder Luo go to the extraterritorial wilderness to look for their research base? The extraterritorial wilderness is too vast. You have to understand that even the cultivated domain close to the Juzhou continent encompasses the borders of 9 provinces, which are extremely expansive. If we cannot pinpoint which province it's in, searching there would be like finding a needle in a haystack. It's impossible to determine exactly who is there. There was nothing Elder Luo could do about this. The Juzhou continent is like a huge island, covered by the boundless extraterritorial wilderness. Each province guards a section of the border, and even the borders of Liangzhou are vastly expansive, not to mention the borders of Qingzhou, Yongzhou, and other places. The cultivated domain of Unrestrained might not necessarily be the one near Liangzhou. It could also be in the cultivated domains on the peripheries of other provinces, making it even harder to search. Elder Luo added, By the way, regarding your parents, I suddenly found a very serious issue. What happened? They were pioneers. Sun Hushuan, the head of the pioneering department, told me that Xiang Tianxing and others were not executing a mission in the essential domain. At that time, there was some turmoil in the tranquil domain, and Sun Hushuan sent them to investigate. But that mission had already ended. They chose to move forward on their own, directly entering the essential domain. So, the latter incidents in the essential domain were not part of the pioneering missions. Elder Luo knew Sun Hushuan and therefore knew these details. The tranquil domain is a 3rd-degree danger zone, whereas the essential domain is even deeper and more dangerous, seldom visited by humans. And then, Xiang Beifei asked, I went to that place again recently, Elder Luo said. Wasn't it agreed we'd go together? I followed a member of Unrestrained there. I discovered that guy rushed all the way to the northern mountain district of the essential domain. I tracked him to that place. At the time, I was also surprised. Unfortunately, he slipped away from me, Elder Luo said. A heavenly connection rank Unrestrained? Xiang Beifei asked. Elder Luo tugged at his short beard, awkwardly said, It's a bit embarrassing to say, but he was in the God refining stage. Really? Xiang Beifei was stunned. A martial artist at the God refining stage managed to slip away from Elder Luo? Zhu Yiji of the Heavenly Connection stage even had to rely on the blood burst skill to barely escape. How could someone at the God refining stage manage it? Did he rely on some system item? Xiang Beifei asked. Elder Luo furrowed his brows, reminiscing. It should not be the case. It's rather that the area in the northern mountain district of the essential domain is a bit peculiar. He disappeared very abruptly. Do you remember that thing I told you about initially? I went to find your parents, but ended up walking back to my original position. Xiang Beifei suddenly understood. You mean, he found a way to move forward? Elder Luo nodded slightly. Yes. Many terrains in the extraterritorial wilderness are very peculiar. He definitely understands that region, must have mastered some special method. He moved forward, whereas I ended up walking back to my original position. However, what's most astonishing is that now I can't even find the pioneering stone left by Xiang Tianqing anymore. The region has changed too much. I have been searching for a week without any results. Xiang Beifei hadn't expected this. Unrestrained had also gone to the northern mountain district of the essential domain. And his parents had also disappeared in the northern mountain district of the essential domain. His father had even sent Shi Wenshuan with a golden birdcage to look for Qin Hongyi. These matters are definitely related. He suddenly remembered that his return to the original state ability was now completely under his control. It was time to restore that pioneering stone. Perhaps he could find some clues. Xiang Beifei sat on his dormitory bed, staring at the pioneering stone in front of him. He was finally ready to deal with the pioneering stone. If it were as Elder Luo had said, and there had been changes in the northern district of the essential domain, then to find out what Xiang Tianqing and the others were up to, he needed to unlock the pioneering stone and perhaps use its records to clarify the direction. The pioneering stone was the key. Elder Luo, being a master of the heavenly connection realm, had sought the help of various people to repair the pioneering stone, but all attempts had ended in failure. The pioneering stone was too special. It simply couldn't be repaired with systematic abilities. Therefore, Xiang Beifei didn't repair it in front of Elder Luo because he didn't know how to explain his own abilities. Xiang Beifei's palm emitted a white glow. Although he could now control return to the original state and wasn't at risk of being backfired upon by it, the process still needed to be handled with extreme caution. Even though return to the original state couldn't backfire on him now, it could still backfire on other objects. If not carefully controlled, it could still destroy the pioneering stone. Xiang Beifei manipulated the return to the original state with his spiritual power, and it quickly emitted a faint aura that spread over the pioneering stone. Under his guidance, the power of return to the original state rapidly permeated the stone. Every tiny crack within the pioneering stone seemed to be filled with the aura of return to the original state, beginning to change, and gradually, the stone reunited into its original form. The whole process wasn't too difficult. Xiang Beifei was no longer the novice he had been 6 months ago. Soon, the pioneering stone was completely restored by return to the original state. What exactly did you leave behind? Xiang Beifei calmly looked at the pioneering stone, now unharmed, then made an imprint of it onto paper. Buzz! Lines of text soon appeared on the paper. They were Xiang Tianqing's handwriting, left during his expedition in the outer wilds. In just a moment, all the words appeared in front of Xiang Beifei, a complete diary. Xiang Beifei eagerly opened the diary and began to read from the beginning. This matter was very important to him. The first few pages of the diary were routine records of Xiang Tianqing's journey before venturing out to pioneer, including where he set up pioneering points, what kind of terrain he encountered, any special markers, and the desolate beasts in the area. All this data was recorded clearly, as pioneers had to leave behind their records to facilitate the reference for their successors. Such information wasn't what Xiang Beifei was looking for, but he still read through earnestly, not missing a single word. July 18th, Northern District of the Essential Domain. We've exited the bounds of the Northern District of the Essential Domain. Barely any pioneers come this way. Lien and I are among the few who do. We continued north and entered a withered forest. The withered forest is peculiar. It revives as we advance. I quickly realized that what surrounds us are not trees, but a unique kind of desolate beast. Because they are distributed around Mao Ho. We finally reached Mao Ho, confirming that our direction was correct. These tree-like beings, I think they should be called Yumeng, which sounds like their call. The Yumeng chased after us the whole way, although I wasn't too concerned about them. However, Lien said she could sense that these Yumeng were different from ordinary desolate beasts, and advised me not to harm them for now. Once we reached Mao Ho, the Yumeng stopped pursuing us. This place is their sacred ground, and my guess was right. Mao Ho In Wood restrains Yumeng. At the foot of Mao Ho, the Yumeng watched us with keen eyes, but I knew they meant no harm. I discovered that I still decide to call them he, because their intelligence is far superior to that of ordinary desolate beasts. Their tone is quite special. Although they only make 2 sounds, the length and tone of these sounds make them easy to master. One of the Yumeng tried to communicate with me. It was difficult to converse with a Yumeng, but I think I managed it. At least I learned their tones. In the process of communicating with them, I gradually learned about the Yomeng's past. The Yumeng are a unique species. I don't even want to categorize them as desolate beasts because they have their unique way of living, though their fate is somewhat bumpy. When asleep, they are trees. When awake, they are people. They said that they are a race burdened with fate, forced to be connected with Mao Ho. I asked why they had to be connected with Mao Ho. They wouldn't say, but only told me that even I was no better off than they, as we are all bound by fate. Mao Ho is like the shackles of fate, binding them here. Lien asked them why they don't try to break this bondage. They said they were powerless, having tried and failed. I know this because we are also trying. Hence I came to find that answer. I decided to leave the withered forest. The Yumeng told me where I could find the answer I was searching for, but I had to leave the forest first. They told me to fly north. Interestingly, because my son's name is Xiang Beifei, taken by his grandfather. I wonder if Cho Ho is still intact. This was the record from July 18th. As Xiang Beifei read this entry, he suddenly noticed something amiss, because he saw some strange phrases. However, the infant did not dissipate. After being cleaved, countless tentacles burst from its body and merged into the surrounding tentacles. Seeking death, Yi Changfeng grasped his sword tightly and slashed out once again towards the front. This strike was like a bolt of lightning, mixed with the terrifying force of thousands of pounds, and the bitter sword chi cut through hundreds of meters, actually splitting open a fissure in the sky full of tentacles. As the tentacles were cleaved apart, they attempted to congeal back together, but soon between the tentacles, countless sword chi exploded. Boom! 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 All the tentacles failed to escape under Yi Changfeng's sword. He forcefully destroyed them throughout the city. The tentacles were shredded by the sword chi, and the remaining ones began retracting towards the ground in fear, quickly disappearing from sight. You all wait here. Don't run around. Yi Changfeng flung his sword out. The Long Yuan sword hovered over their heads, as if to protect them, while another sword appeared in his hand. With a single step, he vanished into thin air amidst a flicker of space. Thank goodness Mr. Yi came. Fan Kai breathed a sigh of relief. If Mr. Yi hadn't arrived in time, they might have been doomed this trip. But Sun Yushan didn't quite understand and asked, "What kind of desolate beast is this thing? Why have we never seen it before?" The two had been training in the cultivated domain for 3 years, and they were roughly aware of the types of desolate beasts present. Although some desolate beasts were powerful, none had ever been as troublesome as this time, and they hadn't expected to nearly lose their lives today. Xiang Beifei pondered for a moment, then turned to Xiaohei and said, "Xiaohei, you should be able to take him out of this space, right?" Xiaohei nodded. This was a space created by the system, and no power of the system could confine Xiaohei. It could leave the system's bindings whenever it wished. Then take him out of this space first and let him stay in the forest, Xiang Beifei said. It was unclear what dangers lurked on this deserted island, but considering what had happened to Lu Gue, leaving him here would be unsafe. Taking him to the forest outside appeared to be a better option. Xiaohei hopped onto Lu Gue, its tiny paws stepping on him, and Lu Gue's body started to seem a bit strange. Xiang Beifei could still see him, yet he could also see the forest ground outside of the space. This should be fine. Xiao Ma and the others might come into the forest looking for us. We need to continue searching for the others. Xiang Beifei stated. Lu Gui's current condition should ensure he won't be harmed by any desolate beasts on the island, but Xiang Beifei needed to quickly find Lu Jiwei and He Yun. Based on their earlier descriptions, the forest was very unsafe and could potentially kill them. Xiang Beifei leaped forward and continued forward for about 5 minutes when suddenly, from within the forest, an urgent noise arose, followed by a surge of, from the school, the only useful system rewards he could get were from teachers. The other students, even S-rank ones, were still only at the early stages of chi controlling, and their task rewards were ineffective. He had inadvertently taken part in many teachers' tasks, the reason they became teachers often due to their own systems choosing, frequently performing tasks on students. But system rewards aren't instantaneous. To receive the rewards, one must wait until the other party completes their task. Some people's tasks take a long time to complete, a few days at the least or even several months, so even if one partakes in the rewards, they're not received quickly. However, Xiang Beifei had his principles. Some teachers and students were quite good to him, working hard on tasks to improve themselves, and it would be unfair to them to lose their rewards. He wouldn't target these people. As long as no one brought trouble his way, everyone could coexist peacefully. On the weekend, Xiang Qingde went to the market, while Xiang Beifei stayed at home and continued to practice the Chaos Yin-Yang formula, finally breaking through to the mid-stage of chi controlling. He realized that the speed at which he was enhancing his strength was faster than that of S-rank awakeners. Zhuo Jing and Lu Qianruo were still at the early stage of chi controlling, and many R and N grade classmates hadn't even reached the threshold of chi controlling. Everyone possessed a system, and their power advances relied on completing tasks. Of course, some systems also provided their hosts with various cultivation methods, mainly to strengthen physical fitness, requiring personal cultivation to work. Clearly, the pace of advancement varied. Are you the N-rank new student planning to enter Liangzhou University under societal pressure? Asked a. I hear you scored high in the cultural exams, but do you think our elite academy accepts anyone just because they're good at their studies? Another boy scoffed. Come on. Let me, your sister, take care of you and teach you how to write the word elite. A girl dressed breezily stretched lazily, her little finger digging into her ear. Hey, you Xiaoyao, we were here first. We need to establish our presence with the new student. It's our turn. Your Mount Tai Club can queue up, the tall boy yelled. You Xiaoyao, the girl referred to, let out a string of silvery laughter and said, What's the matter? Still sore from losing to us last time? Planning to take it out on the N-rank awakener? Is that all you're capable of? What do you mean by that? We went easy on you girls last time. Can't you tell? The tall boy retorted. Hee hee. That's so amusing. Ding Ming, since you like letting us win so much, why not give us another chance? Yu Xiaoyao giggled, twisting her slender waist.